Chapter 728. Did she really think that she could knock him out with that little bit of anesthetic? What a joke! Even if the dosage was doubled, it would at most make him blow a snot bubble. If she wanted him to fall asleep, only Guashuk's cold tea would be able to do that. After the pear blossom disappeared into the night, the sleepy Huaisher suddenly opened his eyes. His expression was solemn and serious. It wasn't a coincidence that the Heaven-Eye pear blossom knew his identity. She even used him to escape from everyone's sight and secretly investigate some secrets in the Huangchuan family. Special investigator, female, infiltrated, searched Extreme Path headquarters. His expression gradually became serious. Amidst the excited shouts of the crow, he felt that there was something wrong with the plot, but how could he not follow her when encountering such a situation? However, he might not be needed. Huaisher closed his eyes. Under the Astronomy Association's seal and disguise, young Arbiter Ming's sacred mark quietly activated. The bone burial sanctuary slowly opened up, and a slender arm reached out and pressed the light switch in the room. The light was turned off. Immediately after, a beautiful body appeared from the darkness. Substitute Huai Zisuko came online again. Huaisher lowered his head and looked at this naked body. He snapped his fingers, and the darkness immediately rolled like a thick fog, covering the body and turning it into a night suit. Purely in terms of performance, this complete substitute had the ability to transform into origin substance and could even hide in the shadow. It was even more convenient than Huaisher's original body. It was definitely an excellent method for tracking and infiltrating. Very good. Now there were two female spies who had infiltrated and searched. It was twice as exciting. Huaisher closed his eyes on the bed, and Huaizasuko's eyes gradually became lively. She followed the scent in the wind and snuck into the darkness outside the window. He wanted to see what this Heaven-Eye pear blossom was up to. The entire journey was silent. After Huaizasuko's body had transformed into origin substance, she had completely melted into the shadows. She was completely unobstructed, even under the light. At the closest distance, she was able to enjoy a spectacular infiltration show. The Huangchuan family's inner courtyard was heavily guarded. Aside from their loyal subordinates, there were at least 4 ascendants patrolling and guarding the place. Furthermore, the surveillance cameras covered every single blind spot. More importantly, the entire inner courtyard, especially the area around Huang Chuan's office and treasury, was covered with more than 2 layers of secret protective measures. Huaisher was unable to identify the complicated effects, but the most important one was undoubtedly a warning. As soon as someone without identification entered or exited the building, or if an origin substance reaction that wasn't recorded in the records appeared, the alarm bells would go off. On the other hand, Sheng Tianmu Li Hua continued to walk forward confidently. He held an eyeball-shaped candle in his hand. Under the illumination of the candle, all the traps and alarms lost their effect. Huai Jisoo was hidden in the elongated shadow behind her. Step by step, they went deeper and deeper. It was as if Huang Chuan himself had told her about all the defenses and defenses in this place. The Heaven-Eye pear blossom was completely unimpeded. She went everywhere, practically sweeping through the inner courtyard of the Huangchuan family's residence, including the complex underground tunnels and the large plaza with unknown uses. It was as if she was searching for something. Her speed was incredibly fast, as if she didn't care about anything unrelated to her. Finally, she entered the most secret storeroom. It was the most heavily guarded place in the entire Huangchuan family. An old man was leaning against the wall at the entrance, as if he had already fallen asleep. However, the simple spear in his arms constantly emanated a bone-piercing, killing intent. Anything that dared to invade this area, even if it was an insect or a speck of dust, would be silently cut in half. The Heaven Eye Pear Blossom paused in her steps, stopping outside of the guard's detection range. The light from the eyeball-shaped candle in her hand began to glow, and the speed at which it burned increased rapidly. At the same time, the light began to shrink until it completely enveloped her. She hid in this narrow space, her back hunched as she slowly made her way into the area covered by the spear's killing intent. There was no sound at all. Even the movement of her feet didn't cause the slightest sound. Just like that, she brushed past the old man. But how could Huaishur allow such a thing to happen? No matter what this woman wanted to do, Huaishur wanted to play some tricks on her. Not only did she ambush and drug an outstanding young man like him, but she also sneaked into someone else's backyard so late at night. She definitely wasn't a good person. As an outstanding member of the Astronomy Association who was determined to protect the current situation, Huaishur had to help her realize her mistakes so that she could repent as soon as possible. He couldn't let her make more mistakes. Thus, under the Heaven Eye Pear Blossom's feet, in the shadow, the white paper Suko silently stretched out a finger, bent it, and flicked it. Pa! Amidst the silence, a soft sound suddenly broke out. The sleeping old man suddenly opened his eyes, and the ancient spear in his arms shook, about to let out a low cry. But immediately after, he saw a hand appear out of thin air in front of him. In the palm of the hand was a small mirror, and the mirror, a ray of dim brilliance, quietly flashed through his eyes, and immediately he was stunned on the spot, as if he had lost his soul, completely forgetting where he was. The Heaven Eye Pear Blossom quickly put away the mirror and lowered her head to touch the mirror, revealing a regretful and pained expression. She didn't delay any longer and leaned against the door, quickly beginning to crack the password of the storeroom door. Soon, with a soft click, her figure disappeared behind the door, together with Huaishur. In the spacious storeroom, there were no more surveillance cameras. When it was originally designed, they probably already thought about it. If the opponent could enter unimpeded, any more security and surveillance would be useless. Moreover, every time the Huangchuan family went in and out, it was troublesome, right? But it was convenient in this kind of place. Huaishur secretly clicked his tongue. The Heaven Eye Pear Blossom put away the candle in her hand and walked quickly. She didn't even look at the shelves on both sides and directly rushed into the innermost area. After looking around, her body suddenly stopped for a moment. She suddenly turned around. Immediately after, she saw in the shadow behind her an unbelievable figure slowly appeared. The newcomer's face was extremely beautiful, and her body was beautiful. Her slender body was leaning back, and her right arm was raised high, holding a majestic and beautiful spear in her hand, and fiercely stabbing towards the Heaven Eye Pear Blossoms, but backstab. Bold evildoer, why aren't you showing your true form? Seeing that he was exposed, Huaishur immediately shouted loudly, "Mighty Sky!" Unfortunately, before he could shout the word dragon, his voice was swallowed by the frozen air. The Heaven Eye Pear Blossom flicked her wrist, and a thin and long bracelet lit up, and a spherical force field suddenly spread, instantly enveloping the two of them, and freezing all sound. Everything was silent. 2 daggers had already shot out from the Heaven Eye Pear Blossom's hands, and directly stabbed towards the sneak attacker's face. As fast as lightning, the spear in Huaishur's hand suddenly disappeared, and was replaced by a blood-stained resentment, and as the iron feathers multiplied, the sharp, long sword blocked the daggers, and went straight for the Heaven Eye Pear Blossom's chest. First the butt, then the chest. Even Huaishur himself felt that he was extremely vulgar. But immediately after, the daggers in the Heaven Eye Pear Blossom's hands flew out silently, and after drawing 2 strange arcs in the air, they were respectively aimed at Huaishur's neck and back. The Heaven Eye Pear Blossom's body fell backwards, and like an iron plank bridge, she dodged the resentment. After that, a pistol appeared in her empty right hand, and she repeatedly pulled the trigger towards Huaishur. The loud sound was extinguished in the silence, but the bullets were burning with flames as they flew towards Huaishur. There was simply no time to block the bullets. But long before the Heaven-Eye Pear Blossom pulled the trigger, Huaishur had already raised the blade, blocking the front of the gun. Following the violent tremble of his arm, the 4 hexagonal cone-shaped cursed bullets had already shattered on the blade of the resentment, and immediately after, the fragments were swallowed by the resentment. Huaishur felt a chill run from his heels to the back of his head. The premonition of death slowly dissipated. He did not know what kind of vicious curses were hidden in those few bullets. It was almost comparable to the numbered curse bullets that the Astronomy Association specially made for wanted criminals. If he was hit, not to mention young Si-Ming, even great Si-Ming would have to suffer. With his hair standing on end, Huaishur casually dispersed the resentment. The ground beneath his feet shook, and his entire body flew forward. U-step plus drummer, the distance between the Heaven-Eye Pear Blossom was instantly covered, and immediately after, the hastily arranged posture was broken by the drummer. Her arms involuntarily bounced to the sides, and even the bracelet on her wrist that maintained the silence was broken, leaving her wide open, chasing the wind and chasing the moon mercilessly. Master Huai pressed her to the ground and was about to cut off her middle. The Heaven-Eye Pear Blossom fell to the ground and immediately moaned, raising her delicate and pitiful face, about to cry. Her face was sparkling like jade, like the crescent moon, snow piled up on the flowering trees, tender and charming beyond words, delicate and graceful, beautiful beyond words. Elegant and refined, there was a light aura. Her pink face had a little red lips, and her expression was shy. Oh, who? Huaishur's movements paused, and he could not help but stiffen on the spot, lost in thought. But as her long hair swept in front of him, a familiar smell of shampoo hit him in the face. Overlord! At that moment, Huaishur felt as if he was struck by lightning and subconsciously blurted out, "Old Lu, F***CK, you are Huaishur." The daggers that were piercing his kidneys from both sides paused, and the Heaven-Eye Pear Blossom's expression twitched, and he stared at the paper in his arms, dumbfounded. "Why are you wearing women's clothes?" In the awkward silence, he was stunned for a long time, and retracted his sole ability. "You are so flirtatious. F***CK. You still have the face to talk about others." Huaishur came back to his senses and suddenly became furious. "Aren't you also wearing women's clothes? And you even seduced an innocent young man. I saw it clearly." How could he not see it clearly? Chapter 7, he was the one who was seduced. To be honest, Huaishur was almost shaken, especially just now. If it wasn't for the familiar shampoo smell that made him react, he would have become Miss Li Hua's bootlicker, barking on the ground. When he thought that such a big sister was actually old Lu in disguise, he felt like his entire body was about to split open. No matter how beautiful the equation was, it couldn't calculate the shadow in his heart. What kind of F***king fantasy was this? Also, wasn't old Lu originally at the 2nd level? Why did he drop to the 1st level now? A 1st level soul ability was able to affect him. A 3rd level super. It was beyond ridiculous. He didn't know how many times his soul ability had undergone qualitative changes, and how many ingredients had been added. Even he almost couldn't withstand it. Just as he was feeling scared, heaven-eyed Li Hua, no, Yu Dongri was already lying on the ground, taking off his wig and fanning himself. He wiped the cold sweat off his face and panted. "How did you wake up again this time?" he asked in confusion. I changed the formula. What do you mean by again? Huaishur frowned and realized that things weren't that simple. He immediately narrowed his eyes. Did I see you wearing women's clothes many times? Also, why did you change the formula? Also, how did you know that I'm Huaishur Bai? He wanted to stuff 100,000 questions into Yu Dongri's mouth and force him to spit out the answer. But Yu Dongri avoided the topic, his eyes drifting. Anyway, it's a long story. It's fine. Let's make it short. Huaishur grinned and smiled ferociously, pressing him to the ground. Explain everything to me, clearly. Otherwise, I'll take you to the Huangchuan family to reason with you. Lu Dongli, who was on the ground, rolled her eyes when she heard that. She put on the wig again and turned into the appearance of a pear blossom with heavenly eyes. Then she rubbed her thighs and pleaded with a weak face, Mr. Huaishur Bai, can you let me go first? It hurts here. Really? Huaishur raised his hand expressionlessly and picked up the broom leaning on the shelf next to him. Maybe it's constipation. I'll get a stick to help you clear it. As he spoke, he pointed the broomstick in his hand at Yu Dongri's mouth. In order to prevent any future troubles, let's start from the top so that you'll be completely unobstructed from top to bottom. Yu Dongri immediately became angry and widened his eyes. She's a big sister now. Can't you be gentler? I'm a F** King Big Sister too. I love this type. What's wrong with that? Huaishur sneered and flipped his waist-length hair. He snorted coldly. Give up, old Lu. The new generation surpasses the old. In terms of beauty, you can't compare to the current me. And with a bang, the broomstick hit Yu Dongri's arm, which was hidden behind his back. Put down the anesthetic you're hiding behind your ass. Don't even think about taking out the mirror. I saw it clearly just now. Just like that, Huaishur Bai Su Zi stepped on Heaven Eye's pear blossom. The broomstick in his hand was pointed at her face. He sternly urged, Are you going to talk or not? If you don't talk, I'll cut you open. I'll talk. Yu Dongri raised his hands in surrender, but his eyes looked around. But there's no mood here. Why don't we go back to the room and slowly talk? Kacha! The handcuffs that Huaishur had just made with the rope of sorrow were cuffed onto Yu Dongri's hands. Arrest was the end of it. Forget it. It's okay if you don't talk. Huaishur gave up on prying open this guy's mouth and coldly said, Come with me, Mr. Lu. The astronomy meeting has been looking for you for a long time. Don't F***CK. No. Yu Dongri struggled with all his might. He opened his eyes wide and growled, I want to go to the astronomy meeting with you. These people in Dambwa Inner Circle are dead. Really? Don't worry. I'm here, Huaishur replied indifferently. You alone are useless. Trust me, Huaishur, I'm not lying to you this time. There's a lot going on behind this. He resisted with all his might. In the end, he gritted his teeth and asked in a low voice, Besides, how do you know that the astronomy meeting isn't deliberately indulging? Huaishur's movements paused for a moment. He raised his eyes with a serious expression. What do you mean? What I meant just now. Yu Dongri fumbled in his pocket for a long time and found a small switch. After pressing it, there was a strange, buzzing sound. Huaishur froze for a moment, and his eyes immediately filled with disdain. F***CK, what are you thinking? This is a blocker. Yu Dongri was angry. He lowered his voice and continued, Also, you've been in Yingzhou for so long. Why don't you think about why the Yingzhou branch is so lousy? If they wanted to do something, I'm afraid they would have done it long ago. You're saying they're doing it on purpose. Huaishur frowned. No, then what's the purpose of this Yingzhou branch? Of course it's for this. Yu Dongri's expression darkened. If you're a regional manager in a large organization and your annual performance is not up to par and you're not an outstanding employee every year, and the higher-ups say that you should merge with the department next door. Do you want to make big news? Do you think there's no internal strife in the military? Without the suppression of the utopia, the internal strife will only be more serious. The astronomy meeting has many ways to improve the living environment of the hybrids, but from the beginning to the end, the Ingzhou branch has not taken any active measures. They coldly watched as the hybrids were pushed into the current situation until the situation was irreversible, although there are historical reasons. Okay, let's not talk about it anymore. Huaishir, help me. Don't say that you've seen me, and don't say that I'm here. He grabbed Huaishir's hand and pleaded in a low voice, just take it as doing it for the hybrids in the Doomsday inner circle. Huaishir was stunned for a long time and could not suppress his suspicion. You ran out of the hospital just for this? What does the people in the Doomsday inner circle have to do with you? In the silence, Yu Dongri said helplessly, if I say that if I don't do anything, all the hybrids in the Doomsday inner circle will be slaughtered in the end, and the Green Sun will launch a counterattack against the astronomy meeting. Half of Ingzhou will sink, and the prelude to the year-end war will begin in advance. I'm here to save the world and avoid war. Would you believe me? What do you think? Huaishir squinted at him. To be honest, I'm also a destruction elemental. Who knows, I might even destroy the world in the end. Why don't you just kill me? I'm really not joking. I'm not either, Huaishir said seriously. I'm serious. Yu Dongri was furious. Then tell me, will you help me or not? Betraying the astronomy meeting because of a lie? Risking your life for a group of irrelevant people? Do you want to do something that will offend everyone even if you succeed? Huaishir was also angry and sneered. Am I that stupid? Yu Dongri did not speak and just looked at him silently. After a long, long time, Huaishir looked away. His smile gradually disappeared. F***ck, he cursed in a low voice. Yu Dongri raised his hand and put the handcuffs over. Huaishir looked at it reluctantly, then looked again. He sighed and closed his eyes to untie him. Admit it. You're a rotten good person. You're rotten. You're super rotten. Yu Dongri whistled and put his arm around his shoulder. Don't worry. I'm now the daughter of the president of the alliance. I'll take care of you in the future. We brothers will stand out in the extreme and reach the pinnacle of life. Rely on you? I might as well go to hell and find a kitten to be the prince of paradise. Huaishir rolled his eyes and couldn't help but ask, is it related to the Farbach residence incident? Lu Dongli's movements paused for a moment, and he shrugged slightly. If you want to talk about it, it should be a little bit. Just treat it as me using my remaining energy. He put on the wig again, tidied up his disguise, and returned to being a beautiful young lady. His eyes were charming and enchanting. Huaishir's whole body went numb. What are you looking at? Aren't you a young lady too? Yu Dongri snorted. Everyone's older than me. Huaishir was too lazy to pay attention to him and asked directly, what's going on with Tianmu Pear Blossom? It's the old man's daughter. She's staying well in America. The old man hid her. That old man, Sheng Tianmu, is he reliable? Do you trust him that much? Before I came to the astronomy meeting, I hung around in Ingzhou for a while. He's quite reliable. Speaking of this, Yu Dongri sighed inexplicably. In short, there's no suspicion on him. I didn't tell him your identity. Remember not to let it slip. At the mention of old Lu's unbearable past, Huaishir suddenly didn't feel sleepy anymore. His eyes lit up, and he leaned over and asked in a low voice, then Green Sun's commander, and you, cough cough, your father and son. Yu Dongri rolled his eyes at him. Do you check my household registration? Aren't I asking you for a favor? Huaisher said in a low voice. You're AF asterisk king, young master of Liangshan. Can't you put in a good word for me? Unfortunately, there are more than 108 young masters in Liangshan, and it won't be my turn. Moreover, if my words really work, do you think the red gloves would stab me in the back? Old Lu searched the warehouse one last time. It was unknown whether he was disappointed or relieved. He waved at him with a complicated expression. Let's go, let's go. We can talk later. Also, before he went out, his footsteps paused for a moment. Sheng Tian Mu, Li Hua tidied his hair, turned around, and smiled delicately. His red lips parted slightly. Don't think about sleeping tonight. Huaisher Kuan, in the dead silence, Huaisher looked at him expressionlessly. Damn baldy crawl. When Miss Li Hua returned to the banquet hall again, everyone couldn't take their eyes off her. As if she had just gone through an intense exercise, her footsteps were slightly unsteady. A few strands of her messy hair were stuck to her face due to her sweat. Her face was slightly red, and when her eyes moved, there was an indescribable charm. Her every movement was even more flirtatious. That gorgeous long robe still had fine wrinkles, and the belt seemed to have changed its position. With just a glance, one could distinguish that kind of tiredness and satisfaction in the sudden dead silence. Everyone was dumbfounded. The sound of jaws dislocating could be heard endlessly. Bastards, what did you do in secret? Those angry and sorrowful gazes were like sharp blades that pierced through Huaisher Kuan, who was following behind them. Countless flames of jealousy burned fiercely in those pitch-black eyes. Huaisher couldn't help but roll his eyes. He had completely lost all hope in this world. On the other hand, Shang Tian Mu Li Hua returned to her father's side as if nothing had happened. He smiled and responded to his father's question. Your current identity is my daughter. Can you please take care of your own reputation? Old man Sheng Tianmu's smile was full of doting and kindness. He secretly glared at this person in a blind spot that others couldn't see. He asked in a low voice, Have you investigated everything? It's not the Huangchuan family, Li Hua answered. It's not. Sheng Tianmu was stunned for a long time. He couldn't hide his astonishment. After a long time, he sighed in a low voice. If that's the case, there's no other possibility of the divine city's future. After muttering to himself for a moment, he asked in a low voice, Are you sure? Since we're already here, why not give it a try? Li Hua answered with a smile. Time is on our side anyway. Sheng Tianmu thought for a moment and nodded. All right, he said. Then let's give it a try. Just as the warm conversation between father and daughter ended, Li Hua stood up and left. Sheng Tianmu's smile gradually disappeared. When he looked at the core members of the alliance in the hall, his eyes became cold. The originally low noise quickly calmed down. The wild beasts felt something unusual. They smelled some kind of dangerous aura. In the dead silence, everyone lowered their heads, waiting for the president's reprimand, until the old man's voice came from the very front. As the leader elected by the alliance, I naturally can't do nothing. I must do something to repay everyone's support. So, I think we should do this. Sheng Tianmu thought for a moment and said seriously, Since we've finished eating and drinking, let's strike while the iron is hot and do some after-meal exercise. Pausing for a moment, the newly minted leader of the alliance gave his first order. Gather all men, bring all weapons, and make all preparations. Tonight, we will attack the Iron King Party's headquarters. Chapter 7:30. In the wee hours of the night, the president of the Iron King faction, Osho Mitsuwaki, woke up from his sleep and heard urgent knocks on the door. Bad news, President, bad news. A subordinate urged him loudly outside the door. Those bastards from the Dambwa inner circle are coming to fight us. Osho Mitsuwaki suddenly got up from his bed. At first, he was stunned, then stunned, and then stunned again. He didn't even have time to put on his pajamas. He opened the door and stared at his subordinate, who was rushing outside. Are you sure? Between the mottled white hair, a pair of gloomy eyes shone coldly. The subordinate nodded. 15 minutes ago, news came from the Hybrid Alliance. Simu has become the president and is determined to start a war with us. He wants us to pay with blood. TSK, start a war? Relying on a bunch of bastards? Osho Mitsuwaki gritted his teeth and squeezed out the words from between his teeth. You're really something, old man. In the silence, he didn't say anything. His pale face, which had been deprived of sleep, quickly turned red. The scar on his forehead was almost bleeding. He was already unable to restrain his anger. The door frame under his hand had already cracked and was emitting a sharp cry in his anger. He wasn't angry because the other party dared to attack, but because they dared to use him to establish authority. Hey, Sakai. Osho Mitsuwaki lowered his eyes and asked coldly, Do I look like a pushover? Sakai lowered her head and didn't dare to answer. Very good. I originally said that I would deal with them after the president gave the order. Since they dared to come to us, I don't mind sending them on their way. Osho Mitsuwaki raised his head and said coldly, I'll go and contact the higher-ups. You go and inform the others. Everyone get ready. Today, we'll catch all of these bastards in one fell swoop. 20 minutes later, in front of the Arakawa family's gate, there was a huge crowd. Most of the Hybrid Alliance's combat power had been urgently transferred here. It looked like a sea of people. Huai Shi had just turned on the communication when he heard AI Qing's anxious voice. Huai Shi, what are you doing? Huai Shi was confused. 10 minutes ago, the Hybrid Alliance showed abnormal movements and declared war on the Iron King faction. Right now, the Metropolitan Police Department, the government of the capital, and even the looming mansion have been alerted. To be honest, I don't know what's going on either. He slapped his forehead and couldn't help but sigh. That old man originally looked quite normal, but as soon as he was promoted, he shouted for everyone to fight. If you ask me, isn't it normal for the underworld to be popular? There's no need to be so nervous, right? What do you think? AI Qing turned around and looked at the phone vibrating crazily on the table. She looked at the number and hung up in annoyance. Before the order is issued, Jingdu will definitely not allow such large-scale bloodshed. Now that the hybrid gangs are so radical, the situation will only worsen. Is it possible that we can't beat him? What do you think? AI Qing sneered. The Iron King clique has always been a black glove used by some ministers to do the dirty work. Otherwise, how could it have stood for so many years? I've just received news that the land self-defense forces outside Kyoto are showing signs of abnormal movements. Wait, didn't the old man just give the order? Huai Shi was dumbfounded. How come the whole world seems to know about it? If the astronomy club knew about it, it could be said that they were omnipotent. After all, the astronomy club. But in less than 20 minutes, how did the whole world know about tomorrow's headlines? Do you think the Hybrid Alliance is an impenetrable place? AI Qing said coldly. Don't overestimate the integrity of the extreme Tao. There are a lot of people who work part-time in it. So that's why, after a moment of realization, Huai Shi's heart suddenly thumped and his expression stiffened. Then he heard AI Qing's cold voice. Speaking of which, there were no accidents during the alliance selection, right? Ahem, no, I was there. You know, everything was normal. Huaisher answered dryly. Is that so? Yes, that's right. Huaisher couldn't help but crazily nod his head to increase his credibility. Amidst the silence, AI Ching lowered her gaze and looked at the news report that popped up on her phone. Her voice was calm. Apart from the fact that you spent half an hour in the same room with the daughter of the Heavenly Mu family, are you hiding anything else from me? This, Huaisher's eyes widened, and he almost jumped up in fright. I didn't do anything. AI Ching, you have to believe me. Is that so? AI Ching's tone became calmer. It doesn't look like you didn't do anything. If I say that not only did I not do anything, but I also almost beat her up, would you believe me? In the long silence, AI Ching rubbed her forehead. Huaisher, yes. Huaisher was still hoping for a fluke. I can understand that you are in puberty and have some inhumane curiosity and needs towards women. But please don't lie to me, okay? AI Ching comforted him gently. After all, it's not rare for you to make up news. There's no need to be embarrassed. Really? Why is there so much prejudice and discrimination against me in this world? Huaisher was so angry that he trembled and almost shed tears. Then he felt something tighten around his arm. Beside him, Miss Li Hua raised her head and smiled shyly at him. Suddenly, she leaned on him. She stretched out her slender arm and held his arm just like a little bird. God knows how many envious and jealous gazes she received. However, Huaisher wanted to cry but had no tears. He closed his eyes in despair. Damn, Baldy, get out of here. In order to prevent a small red light spot from appearing on his chest, he wanted to continue explaining. However, AI Ching didn't say anything in the channel anymore. He could vaguely hear some noises from the other side. It seemed like the hybrid alliance's sudden action had caused a huge commotion. They didn't have time to talk to him about what happened in the small room. Miss Li Hua, who was leaning on him, raised her finger and started to draw on his palm. Huaisher was so angry that he slapped her finger away. However, Miss Li Hua sighed. Her finger continued to write on Huaisher's back, act according to my mood later. Huaisher frowned and finally sensed that something was wrong. Yu Dongri continued to write leisurely. Be careful. Long me. Long me? In an instant, Huaisher's body stiffened. He raised his eyes and glanced at the head of Zhou family, who was chatting happily with Sheng Tianmu in front of him. He sensed that something bad was going to happen. Soon, all the members were gathered. Then, more than 10 people who were tied up were brought to the front, under everyone's watchful eyes. Some had bloody noses and swollen faces. Some had ashen faces. Among them, there were people who had just attended the banquet. There was also someone who had sat beside Huaisher, not to mention the subordinates of Luaha's family. Even many people from Huang Chuan's family were brought here. Hey, Sheng, President. Huang Chuan's expression twitched. What is going on? Why have my men been arrested as well? Sheng Tianmu waved his hand. Soon, a subordinate came over with a box. The transparent plastic box was filled with mobile phones, listening devices, and all kinds of communication devices. Some of them even had body temperature and blood. It was obvious that they had just been taken off. There was even half a bone on one of them. Who knew what kind of ruthless person had hidden a communication device in his body? Actually, there are 3 reasons why I called everyone here tonight. In the dead silence, Sheng Tianmu raised his head and said, the first thing is to introduce everyone to me. This old man will be the president of the alliance from now on. Many of you haven't seen me before. I hope that after this, you won't be mistaken in the future. The other thing is to introduce everyone to these people. This is a face that everyone might already be familiar with. As he spoke, Sheng Tianmu walked down the stairs and took a thick stack of documents from his subordinates. He walked past each of the people who were tied up and identified their faces. He threw evidence and information onto those pale faces. This is the foolish company. This is the Iron King Party. This is very noble. He is the lackey of the big shots in the Metropolitan Police Department. This is the spy of the high officials. This is amazing. He is actually a spy from 3 sides. He is very good at walking on a tightrope. This one is from the Russian Federation. This one is basically an information trafficker. As for this one, he is very suspicious, but I didn't find any evidence. Since he has a transmitter on him, then let's just do it together. In the fine rain, Shang Tianmu threw away the last piece of evidence. He raised his head and looked at the faces around him. He said, "These people were originally our brothers and friends, but now they have all become traitors." Behind Shang Tianmu, the middle-aged man who followed silently raised his hand, pulled out a pistol from his arms, and flipped the safety. Suddenly, the people who were tied up on the ground struggled harder. Some people tried to shout, but their mouths were gagged, and they couldn't make a sound. But soon, the subordinate's raised arm was pressed down by Shang Tianmu. "Today, I've called everyone here because I want to tell you that although the alliance is big, there isn't an inch of space left for traitors." In the dead silence, Shang Tianmu took the pistol from his subordinate's hand and pulled the bolt. "So, please look carefully. This is not a deterrent. I just want to tell you," he said, "if one day I betray you, everyone can treat me in the same way." In the dim night, a ray of fire suddenly spewed out from the barrel of the gun. It illuminated Shang Tianmu's calm face. The high-pitched sound spread. The first person twitched and fell to the ground. Blood spread silently. Then the second, the third, the fourth. The old man pulled the trigger one by one expressionlessly. When he ran out of bullets in the middle, he changed the magazine and continued until the last person fell to the ground. In the silence, Shang Tianmu turned around and stared at everyone behind him. Suddenly, he shouted angrily, "You all understand?" "Yes." The clamorous shouts overlapped in one place and spread out like thunder under his cold gaze. Everyone couldn't help but lower their heads and respond in unison. Then Shang Tianmu nodded in satisfaction. "Then let's talk about the last thing." Accompanied by his words, a discordant ringtone suddenly sounded. Above, everyone looked at each other in shock. Finally, they looked at Jiu next to him. In his arms, the phone kept vibrating and making monotonous ringtones. Jiu lowered his head, awkwardly, and hung up the call. But soon, the ringtone sounded again, so persistent, until Shang Tianmu waved his hand. "It's okay. Pick it up and take a look. Maybe it's something important." Jiu smiled embarrassedly after picking up the phone. He was about to reprimand him when he heard an explosion on the other end. There were gunshots and even screams. "President! President! Shang Tianmu's family has gone crazy. They attacked our headquarters. And now the guards are all dead. President! President!" Jiu froze on the spot. Then he looked up and saw the pitch-black barrel of a gun in front of him. It emitted a scorching heat and the smell of gunpowder. Amidst the chaos, Shang Tianmu asked, "Did you hear me clearly, Jiu?" Jiu's expression changed and gradually became distorted. "What are you doing?" "Shang Tianmu, did I offend you in any way?" "Why did you attack me? Didn't you say you were going to—" "Idiot, don't you understand?" Shang Tianmu shook his head coldly. "That was a lie to you when I transferred your guards away." "Hey, Shang Tianmu, what are you doing?" "Wait, it's not just that." The others widened their eyes and wanted to stop him. Huaishi's jaw was about to drop to the ground. This series of changes was too much for the eyes to take in. Each melon was bigger than the last. There was no way they could eat it all. What is this old man trying to do? Although there are occasional conflicts between the five of us, it shouldn't have reached this level. Unfortunately, under the shocked gazes of the others, Sheng Tianmu asked indifferently, I will only ask you once. Jiu Wajun, where is the future lunatic of God City? Chapter 731. What the hell? For a moment, Huaishur was dumbfounded. Fortunately, Lawrence had mentioned this to him before, so he was able to cover it up. Now, it wasn't just him. Everyone else who knew about this couldn't hide their shock. Divine City? Huang Chuan's loud voice was already yelling, Sheng Tianmu, are you serious? Even the president wouldn't say something like that. It seemed like he was reprimanding, but in reality, he was supporting Sheng Tianmu. Normally, Huang Chuan might have maintained his one-track mind and reckless character, but now that he was in a hurry to know the truth, he couldn't care less. Since you dared to say it, then you must have some confidence. Sheng Tianmu calmly replied, Jum Kuan, am I right? Jum Kuan's expression was gloomy, and he couldn't control the twitching of his eyes. What are you talking about? Even the president can't frame me like this, right? You still won't admit it? You're really shrewd, Jum Kuan. Sheng Tianmu smiled and waved behind him. Soon, someone came up with a pad and showed everyone the video sent from the scene. The things found in the underground space of Jum Kuan's house. Or rather, the entire screen was filled with things no one had ever seen before. However, anyone who had a slight understanding of medicine would be able to tell from the shaking screen that it was a sophisticated and complicated biological laboratory. Huaishur even recognized many of the equipment that Tongyi had written for him. There was even a top-grade biological furnace that the Stonepot Society had only recently opened for export and production. This is the scene that was just sent over. This old man didn't dare to believe that there was such a luxurious laboratory in your house. Sheng Tianmu sneered. Is Jum Kuan preparing to enter the medical industry? Jum Kuan's face twitched, but he quickly defended himself. I just want to figure out the medicinal properties of the panacea. My men have obtained one in private and want to conduct an experiment on it. Bang! There was a loud sound, and Jum Kuan suddenly screamed as a bloody hole appeared in his leg. In the crowd, Jum Kuan's subordinates were in an uproar, but they had already handed in their weapons before coming in. Now, they were all under Sheng Tianmu's watch, and no one dared to take a step forward. You're still being stubborn even now? Look at me. Do you think the people here will believe something as stupid as a panacea? Sheng Tian Mu took a step forward and pointed the gun barrel at Zhou's face. He roared, Where is the future of God City? Where is that bastard who wants to turn us into pollutants? But soon, an unbelievable scene happened again. Just as he was about to enter the room, the bloody hole caused by the bullet actually stopped bleeding. Then, the thumb-sized wound began to heal rapidly. Without using any medicine, without any origin substance fluctuations or sacred inscriptions to heal him, he was able to quickly recover to his original state. Ha ha ha! I did it! I finally did it! I widened my eyes in surprise, as if I hadn't expected this. When I came back to my senses, I was overjoyed. Did you see that? Did you see that? The panacea was effective. The experiment was a success. He didn't lie. I've already been healed. Ha ha ha! As he laughed excitedly, the originally eye-catching scales on his temples began to peel off. In the end, only a few faint leukoplakia remained. His nails, hair, and skin were all rapidly growing back. Very quickly, his body was covered in dead skin. When he reached out and pulled off the cumbersome skin, what was revealed was a face that was 10 years younger. His originally mottled white hair had become dense and jet black. He had regained his youth. He had become like a normal person. In front of everyone's eyes, such a shocking miracle had occurred. But immediately afterwards, Jiu's expression froze, and his movements froze in place. His laughter stopped. Scarlet blood and fragments of his organs continuously spurted out from his mouth and nose. He coughed violently. Then he screamed in pain. His neck seemed to be twisted as he struggled to raise it. His eyes were bloodshot, as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. The cracks on his face quickly spread. In the end, it fell apart. It was as if he had jumped into a boiling pool of lime, and his screams and cries quickly dissolved. No, why is it like this? We didn't agree on this. He screamed hoarsely and raised his head with difficulty. He screamed in horror. What's going on? Hey, God City. God. Then the arm that he had raised fell off his body. Jiu fell to the ground, and soon he dissolved into a puddle of mud. In the blink of an eye, there was nothing left of him. Huaishir had already raised his eyes and looked in the direction that Jiu had seen before he died. In the corner, the middle-aged follower who had been silently following behind Jiu. You said too much, Mr. Jiu. The man whose face was hidden in the shadows slowly raised his head and took off the glasses on his face. He sighed coldly. Even in death, you still like to cause trouble for others. That's enough. It was unknown what kind of disguise those eyes were, but after they were taken off, the man actually grew more than 10 centimeters taller. Under the light, it was the face of the future of God's city. It was not much different from the picture, except that he had neglected to take care of his beard, which was much longer. It's so strange. I shouldn't have been exposed. Why are you so sure of my tracks? He calmly opened his arms and asked Sheng Tianmu, why are you standing on the side of an outsider, Mr. Sheng Tianmu? We are the true compatriots, aren't we? Everything I do, isn't it for the sake of all the mixed breeds? No one is your compatriot, God City's future. Sheng Tianmu turned his head and pulled the trigger expressionlessly. A bloody hole appeared on the face of God City's future. Brain matter and blood slowly flowed out. God City's future died instantly. It should have been like this. But God City's future did not fall on his back. Instead, he froze on the spot. After a long time, he slowly lowered his head and looked at the blood that flowed from the hole on his forehead to the ground. Wagging your tail and begging for mercy will not bring you peace. Sheng Tianmu. He sighed in disappointment. Amidst the rain of bullets from extreme Tao, he indifferently endured the countless attacks that were enough to destroy his body. He stared at everyone with pity. His smile gradually became mocking. Look, everyone, the things that divide us are far more powerful than the things that unite us. You submit to power, indulge in the illusory peace, and forget the pain and humiliation we were born with. So stupid, so funny, humans are like cells. Aggregation is a rare miracle. Division is the eternal theme. His broken lips were filled with blood. He slowly opened them and spoke in a hoarse voice. He said, "My name is Prussian. Prussian, differentiation, division, separation. God City's future registered name was derived from an ancient legend in Hebrew. The most essential meaning was to pursue holiness and stay away from the mortal world. In order to create a beautiful and pure country, to stay away from depraved and dirty fools." At that moment, in the rain of bullets, the corner of the broken face curled up, revealing a ferocious smile. Now, the time of separation has arrived. Bang! At that moment, his head exploded, because behind the front row, someone pushed the people in front of him aside and walked up. Someone impatiently threw a punch and directly smashed his dog's head. Hatue! Huaishir lowered his head and spat fiercely. Then he raised his foot and stomped down. Not satisfied, he kicked again. Split your head. Bang. So what if you're not afraid of bullets? Do you know sumo wrestling? Bang. Do you know what quadruple wrestling is? Bang. Have you heard of the story of the hero, Tiger King Group? Ignoring the shocked gazes of the people around him, Huaishir punched and kicked, directly hammering this guy on the spot. At the thought of the huge, hidden danger that this idiot's existence had brought to so many innocent people, Huaishir wished he could scatter this dog's ashes and separate him forever. Don't transform, understand? Huaishir stretched out his hand, pulled up the wreckage on the ground that was rapidly recovering by the neck, aimed at the newly grown head, and punched again. The channeling time is so long, and there's no invincibility frame. Do you really think you're a magical girl? Bang! Blood spurted out. He was stunned for a moment, because the feeling of this punch was a little strange. To put it in words, it was like punching a pig's urine bubble. It felt a little slippery. Then, he heard the angry roar from the future of the divine city. In his hand, the broken body suddenly expanded and shattered, turning into a rolling abyss of sediment that swept in all directions. An impact comparable to an explosion swept across, flipping Huaishir over. Then, endless darkness spewed out from it, as if Huaishir had finally broken the outer disguise of the outer shell, revealing the rotten true appearance of the fruit after peeling off the outer shell at that moment. Yu Dongri, who was dressed in female clothes, narrowed his eyes, and his eyes became cold. As expected, the aura of hell spewed out from the broken corpse, and the phantom of the two rotten snakes entangled together appeared. Then, the body of the future of the divine city reappeared from the void, intact. The blessing from the ruler came here, allowing him to be reborn, and he roared to the sky. A high-pitched scream burst forth, and then there was a sudden explosion in the night sky, like the roar of a fighter jet breaking through the speed of sound. The earth shook violently. Where Huaishir had originally been, a huge hole had appeared. A bloody and huge figure, who seemed to have been skinned, descended from the sky, shaking off the dust on his body. When he raised his head, two strange sharp horns had grown out of his face, and his face was painted with gold, ferocious and violent. Golden Bear Boy, fourth level of the Ing State genealogy. He should have been like this if he hadn't fallen into the abyss. The Frozen One. That's Lord Kajiro. Huang Chuan was the first to recognize the appearance of the newcomer, and his eyes instantly burned red. You bastard, Divine City, you even want to disturb the dead. He roared, kill that bastard for me. Kill that bastard. The hybrid hero who had died long ago, the protector of the Dambwa inner circle, had now come back from the dead and stood beside the future of the divine city. His empty eyes looked at Huaishir. Killing intent erupted. Oh my God! Huaishir looked up in the midst of rolling pathetically, and then he panicked. Is AI Ching here? Is she here? Is she here? Chapter 732. If not Scram. AI Ching almost jumped out of her chair when she heard the screams. She thought that Huaishir was about to die a heroic death. However, when she took a closer look at the satellite surveillance, she found that this guy jumped up and ran away so smoothly and coquettishly that no one could say anything about it. Emergency situation. Huaishir, AI Ching suppressed the faint pain in her stomach and responded in the midst of the complicated mobilization and command. No one expected that the original alliance would be able to find traces of the future of the divine city. Now, everyone was in a panic. Don't worry, backup is on the way, she said. Don't worry about the others. Hide. An emergency situation meant that the operation personnel would encounter a high risk of death. If necessary, they could consider abandoning the mission to protect themselves. Simply put, if you felt that the problem was too big, you could leave without worry. No matter how many others died, it didn't matter. As for the price of failure, It had nothing to do with Huaishur, the tool. Soon, the information of the person who fell from the sky appeared on AI Qing screen and was transmitted to Huaishur. 9. Unlimited, Ingzhou Genealogy Level 4, Golden Bear Boy. He used to be the guardian of the Donghua Inner Circle and also one of the pillars of the Alliance. Because he didn't like Ji Dao's style of doing things, he didn't show his face in the Alliance. However, the Alliance was able to survive until now because of his contributions. He could be called the guardian of the Donghua Inner Circle. A year ago, he died because of the recurrence of his old wounds. Since then, the pressure on the Alliance had been increasing day by day, and now the hero who had passed away had returned from hell and turned into a demon, standing beside the future of the Divine City. The future of the Divine City laughed, reached out, and pointed at Huaishur. In an instant, there was a deafening sound. The Golden Bear Boy stepped forward, and a terrifying power erupted, instantly overturning the surrounding people. The wind pressure from dozens of meters away pushed Huaishur directly into the wall, and he couldn't get out. He could only watch as the iron fist moved forward inch by inch, crushing his body and bones. Huaishur's body trembled, then trembled again. Even if the sky collapsed, however, and even when he was about to be struck out 3 times, there was still didn't choose to use shadow burial. He was just an observer in the astronomy society. At this critical moment, why was he raised his head, widened his eyes, and glared at the enemy in front of him and do nothing? He did not give after such a long time, showing the strength not to mention Lawrence of a member of the Astronomy Association. He should have finished a carton of cigarettes. He was about to die. A green sun representative Huaishur gathered all the strength in his body, dump at this time, and roared to the sky. Lawrence, say something. Don't keep quiet. It wasn't until just now that he realized I know you're that he had a part-time job. Following Huaishur's emotional call, a hurricane howled in the air. A large, pale, blurry hand suddenly appeared. It was a vague image formed by countless pale frost condensing and a huge amount of cold air contracting. 6 extremely long fingers spread out and slammed down on the ground. After accumulating power for a long time, Lawrence brazenly attacked, instantly covering the Golden Bear Boy and the future of the Divine City behind him. As the symbolic power of Green Sun, the 10 disasters were essentially 10 kinds of miraculous imprints that represented disasters. At this moment, the power of the hailstorm disaster was projected into the present through Lawrence as a springboard. The frost was just the surface, but its essence was the decay that extracted all power and destroyed the vitality of all living things. Once it was fully unleashed, it could even cover half of the city. It could be called a weapon of mass destruction. However, in order to bypass the 3 major blockades, Lawrence only used a small part of the miraculous imprint. It still froze the Golden Bear Boy into ice in an instant, but then the ice fell apart, and a bloody and burly figure rushed out from it. Under his protection, the future of the Divine City was unscathed. He didn't care about the friendship of the past at all. The dead people who had died long ago and were frozen in hell ruthlessly punched their former compatriots into meat paste and blood mist. A loud boom rang out. The extreme Daos opened fire. Amidst the rain of bullets, the Golden Bear Boy's body quickly hardened, and countless sparks flew out. He actually withstood the firepower of the modern weapons and blocked the future of the Divine City behind him. He sneered disdainfully, even if they were restricted, and the firepower of these extreme Daos was limited to pistols and small weapons. This defensive power was still terrifying. Why are you attacking him? Attack that dog of a Divine City's future. Huaishur, who was still stuck on the wall, was extremely anxious. If he wasn't worried about losing his horse, he wouldn't even have used the virtuous sword. He would have directly chopped down with the axe of wrath and chopped that dog's head off. The extreme Daos who had opened fire seemed to have woken up from a dream. They instantly turned their guns and aimed at the future of the Divine City, who had just crawled up behind the Golden Bear Boy. This time, the Golden Bear Boy didn't have the arrogance from before. He opened his mouth and sucked in all the blood in the air, along with the remaining origin substance on the deceased's body. His body once again swelled up. He raised his hand and grabbed the future of the divine city by the collar, then suddenly squatted down. As the earth trembled and the bricks cracked, the golden bear boy suddenly shot into the sky again, preparing to leave. It was ridiculous for him to be able to escape like this. Huaishir was just hesitating about whether or not he should throw out the sorrowful rope when he saw a huge shadow appear in the sky. From a distant mountain peak, Lawrence once again appeared. The finger holding the cigarette swiped downwards, and the sky began to rumble. Dark clouds began to gather under the starry sky, and water vapor began to condense. Terrifying heat began to spread in all directions. A huge miracle began to stir up the laws of thermodynamics, and a terrifying and towering body descended. A huge iceberg condensed out of thin air, bringing with it a chill that could freeze the entire mountain peak. It instantly accelerated to the speed of a cannonball and smashed towards the ground. At the same time, its massive body began to shrink at an incredible speed. It completely ignored the laws of physics as the iceberg collapsed inwards, turning into a meteor that burned with frosty flames. The golden bear boy, who had risen into the air, was suppressed by the enormous force and was forced back to the ground inch by inch. His hands were raised high. Blood radiance shot out from his shattered body, burning vigorously and turning into the shadow of an evil spirit, resisting the disaster that was descending from the sky. Shang Tianmu took a step back and bowed to the two people behind him. "I'll have to trouble the two of you from now on." The old man with the spear nodded, while the middle-aged man with the sword did not say a word as he stepped forward. Swordsmanship, shrinking ground. In an instant, he appeared in front of the golden bear boy. The metal radiance in his hands whistled and crisscrossed, leaving a deep, cross-shaped mark on the huge body. Even the operation of the miracle of calamity was cut off by the swordsmanship, and it became stiff. Wherever the blade passed, the miracle of nothingness and the calamity of calamity were cleanly split apart. How pathetic. 9. The old man with the spear side raised the burning spear in his hand and aimed it at the figure that was covered in cracks. He softly said, "Let's meet again in the netherworld, my friend." Intense light burst forth, piercing through the night sky. The terrifying light stung everyone's eyes, taking away all colors, and the world turned pale. Between the pale heaven and earth, everything was left with a simple outline. It was easily pierced through by the spear. A huge bloody hole appeared on the golden bear boy's body, completely destroying it. Then, a pervasive frost covered everything from the outside to the inside. The old man with the sword sheathed his sword. With a soft sound and a gentle breeze, the broken body of the 9 turned into ice powder, collapsing and dissipating. Finally, in the darkness, the sound of a gunshot burst forth. The bullet crossed a long distance and once again nailed into the face of the God City's future. He originally wanted to laugh in disdain, but as soon as he smiled, he froze on the spot, because a terrifying heat spread out from the bullet, instantly igniting the darkness in his body, engulfing his limbs and bones. Destruction had arrived. The gunshot that came out of nowhere stunned everyone on the spot. Even the satellite surveillance did not show any clues. It was a sneaky attack. Huaishir tried hard to restrain his gaze, not looking at where the flower was originally. He instinctively had a premonition that the one who fired the shot was Yu Dongri, who had been waiting for a long time. And now, from the burning flames, the God City's future finally understood. It slowly raised its head and smiled disdainfully at everyone. Finally, it raised its eyes and looked coldly at Huaishir. Its lips opened silently in the flames. Then it dissipated into ashes. Dead. What did this turtle say in the end? I didn't hear. It clearly. Huaishir was stunned. He felt as if he had just left the beginner's village and saw NPCs casually hit 999,999 and instantly killed the final boss of the level. But soon he reacted. The God City's future specialization. Genetics. For a scholar of this level, how could it be so easy to die? No matter how much damage the Hybrid's alliance dealt, they could only destroy a clone of the second body. Then, from the bottom of his heart, he felt fear and relief. Fortunately, he was not in a hurry to turn around. Otherwise, now that the God City's future had been dealt with, wouldn't it be his turn? What's this? Tony, who had rushed all the way here, picked up the binoculars and stared at the scene in the distance. He could not believe it and picked up the walkie-talkie. "Hello. Command, we're late. The ashes of the God City's future have been scattered. What do we do next?" "The operation has been terminated." AI Ching's face was gloomy. After a long time, she unhappily squeezed out a voice from between her teeth. Officer Huaishur continued to. Before she finished speaking, she heard hoarse shouts from the scene. It was extremely urgent, heart-wrenching, filled with concern and panic, brimming with lingering fear and worry. That resounding shout was filled with emotions, an interpretation of loyalty and steadfastness, causing one to shed tears and be moved by it. "Come quickly. Protect the Lord. Protect the Lord." In the ruins, Huaishur struggled to get up. He spat out mouthfuls of blood and propped himself up. He stood in front of Shen Tianmu and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Protect the main president." No matter what kind of demons and monsters, if they want to hurt the main president, they have to get through me first. Such a loyal and righteous act made the extreme Tao experts cry with respect and moved them to tears. His tall body stood tall, like a monument, causing the light of the extreme Tao to shine on Shen Tianmu's old face. After going through a set of procedures and confirming that it was safe, Huaishur let out a sigh of relief and revealed a joyful smile. Then his eyes rolled back, and he fainted. This was the final performance for this restless night. As expected, in order to maintain stability and order, the Alliance did not announce the future identity of the God City and his goal to everyone. Instead, they put all the blame on Zhou, who had been stabbed in the back by the God City. In order to prevent the venerable Shen Tianmu from becoming the main president, the traitor of the Alliance, Zhu, secretly colluded with external forces and crazily manipulated Master Zhou's corpse to start a rebellion. Not only did Zhou go against the path of chivalry, he was also heartless. He actually used his own people as test subjects to research forbidden drugs. He deserved to die, and his sneaky behavior had long been seen through by the discerning General Guild Master. In the end, with the help of the White Paper Doll and other loyal people, the General Guild Master quickly quelled the rebellion and set things right, allowing the Dambwa Inner Circle to finally usher in a bright future. Although Lawrence was not satisfied that he had fallen to the wait-and-see part of the story, there was no better way to deal with it. With the approval of the higher-ups, the chaotic and bizarre Alliance conference came to an end. For most of the people in the Alliance, this night was just the beginning. Changing positions, transferring power, dividing up territory, appeasing the people, promoting trusted aides, exchanging benefits. There were simply too many things that needed to be done. Amidst the countless busy matters, no one noticed that there seemed to be an insignificant matter that had been overlooked. However, since it was a small matter, there was no need to pay attention to it. Everyone thought about it, but couldn't remember, so they threw it to the back of their minds and continued to happily trade. On the other side of Kyoto, the night was long. When the morning sun weakly climbed up from the horizon, it illuminated Osho Mitsuwaki's gloomy old face. After a night of hard work with all the elites and countless weapons, the leader of the Iron King faction sat on the steps in front of the headquarters. He lowered his head and looked at the dew on his battle robe. then raised his head to look at the bright sun. Doubts arose from the bottom of his heart. Didn't those bastards say they were going to attack? He slowly turned his head and looked at every uneasy face. He asked softly, "Were they?" "Big, probably lost." Someone mustered up the courage to answer, and then flew out with the loud bang of a shotgun. "Lost." Osho Mitsuwaki's eyes widened, and he roared angrily, "Lost for the whole night?" "It's less than 20 minutes of distance by taxi. In such a long time, I can walk to the Dombwa inner circle. Your King telling me you're lost. Didn't you say that those bastards were going to attack us?" He roared, "Where are they? Where are they?" No one responded. Only the crow passing by in the distance left behind a sharp cackle. In the silence, Osho Mitsuwaki looked at those terrified faces and suddenly lost the strength to be angry. He lowered his head tiredly, threw down the shotgun, turned around, and walked out of the door. He sat on the steps and stared at the gradually flowing traffic outside the door. There was a deep sense of grief and indignation in his heart. Every time you say you're going to *CK a dog. Every time you say you're going to *CK a dog. But every time the dog is ready, you don't come. The long night was so lonely. This is too much. How dare you donkey me? He raised his hand and wiped away the disappointed and bitter tears at the corner of his eyes. Under the light of the morning sun, Osho Mitsuwaki once again understood the hesitation and sorrow of the human world. Chapter 733. In the middle of the night, before the sun rose. In the silent command center, lines of words appeared on the screen in front of AI Ching as she typed on the keyboard. After a comprehensive analysis of the intelligence collected by various departments, the Divine City is suspected to have the power of hell behind it. Their motives are unknown, and the threat level is recommended to be raised. Current suspects: Corpse Workshop, Human Exhibition Bureau, Tomb of the Returnless, Rancher Withered King. The Dombwa inner circle is temporarily stable, and there are signs of riots. Future forecast may be chaotic, but there is still a need to observe during this period. Involves the interim meeting of the P5. When she wrote about the interim meeting of the P5, AI Ching's fingers paused for a moment, hesitating whether to delete this line. According to internal information, the proposals and objectives of this internal meeting of the Directorate of Defense were too serious. If the changes in the Dombwa inner circle were connected, the situation may be further complicated. After a short moment of contemplation, she continued writing the report. Finally, she paused at the last line. Top secret target? No. S09. In the silence, AI Ching's fingers hovered above the case, pausing for a long time. Finally, slowly and surely, she wrote a conclusion, temporarily untraceable. Just like that, she pressed the send button. There was a soft sound on the table. The number on the counter changed. 7. AI Ching sighed silently and closed her eyes tiredly. This time they were even. In the middle of the night, in the hospital, Huaishur inexplicably woke up from a dream. To say that he woke up with a start was very problematic because there was nothing that could affect the quality of a young arbiter of life sleep and make his soul spontaneously wake up from a deep sleep. It was not a stress response, but some changes that triggered the stigmata and perception to naturally make him open his eyes. And then he saw a pair of dark eyes, almost within reach. "Did you miss me?" She smiled and asked softly. Huaishur froze in place and almost screamed. "Ghost." Immediately he reacted. "Oh, it's Tangi. Then it's fine." Huaishur rubbed his face numbly. He couldn't figure out why she woke him up. He could only sigh helplessly. "Why are you floating in the air? Are you trying to scare me?" So calm, when he woke up and saw his big sister's face, shouldn't he be blushing and his heart racing? How disappointing. Tangi looked down and smiled. "Besides, I'm not floating. I'm standing properly. Well, I'm just a little closer. Huai Shi followed her line of sight and met with an obstacle. He turned around and finally saw, to a certain extent, she was indeed standing on the wall beside him. It was as if there was no such thing as gravity. Not even a strand of her hair was floating down, and the hem of her dress stayed where it was supposed to be. How did he do it? He was a fool. But in order to prevent her from throwing out some strange settings to attack him, he could only pretend that he was used to it. He put his body back in its original position, face to face, and asked seriously, "What is it? Can I look for you if there's nothing?" Tangi looked lonely. "I just want to find someone to talk to. Why do you dislike me so much?" "Ha, woman." Huai Shi was unmoved. He even had time to look at the balance in his account. His money was still there. Huai Shi suddenly became more and more surprised and incredulous. It was as if the sun had risen from the west. The world seemed to have suddenly become a fantasy. Tangi actually stopped robbing him. He was stunned for a long time. He looked at the woman in front of him uneasily and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" "I'm very good, very good. I even gained 200 grams. Sigh, I still need to drink less milk tea." After that, she put the milk tea in her hand to her mouth, took 2 sips, and handed it over. "Do you want it?" Huai Shi's eyes twitched. He was about to refuse when he heard her sigh. "Speaking of which, don't you feel that something is wrong?" Huai Shi didn't understand. Tangi shrugged and took a step back. Well, she floated up a little, giving Huai Shi some breathing space. "You might have misunderstood. Although I came at the right time, I didn't wake you up." She looked at Huai Shi's phone, regretfully. "You were already awake before they were ready to make a move." Huai Shi frowned. He raised his hand and flipped open the Book of Destiny. He quickly flipped through his experiences in the past few days. Then his frown deepened. He felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell. The page numbers in the Book of Destiny were no longer coherent. His memories seemed to have changed and were forcefully pieced together. The originally coherent matters had become loose. Moreover, some of the contents were different. Wasn't he still tinkering with Qian Yi and Long Air to fight against Sheng Tianmu? Wasn't there an internal conflict between the 5 bosses? Why did it suddenly? The words on the Book of Destiny suddenly blurred. Soon after, large sections of blacked out and deleted contents quickly appeared. Huai Shi felt as if he was struck by lightning. Those blurry memories quickly changed. Very soon, they shrunk from their fleeting state to their current state. He was drenched in sweat. What the hell? This was the first time he had encountered such a phenomenon. Logically speaking, only he had the right to change the Book of Destiny. To be exact, only Tangi existed as a branch. Without this pen, no item should be able to change the Book of Destiny. However, his destiny and records had silently changed. Could it be that other than himself, there was something else in this world that could affect the celestial genealogy's source code? Don't think too much. There's no problem with the Book of Destiny. The only problem is you, Tangi explained. The records of the Book of Destiny are indeed unchangeable and have the highest priority. However, in reality, its power is limited by its observation point, which is you. Everything is recorded from your point of view. What it witnesses is everything you have experienced. If you can become a natural enemy in the future, it might be able to add in other people's perspectives that are related to you. Similarly, if what you have experienced changes, then the content will naturally be different. What do you mean? Huai Shi didn't understand. It's very simple. Tangi said, it's just that the time has been changed. Huai Shi felt that he was hallucinating. Tangi said calmly, someone used the power of the Bifrost to perform a time jump and revise the events. Although it's a very small part, it still caused the distortion of the present situation to increase. Well, it's obvious that the other party was quite restrained. In order to reduce everyone, they didn't implicate too many people. Probably only close to 2,000 square kilometers of Greenland was eternally decertified. It should be 2,900 now. What the hell? Huaishur was stunned. He felt that everything was getting more and more mysterious. What the hell is this? Let me think. If I explain it in a way that you can understand, it's load the file. Tanguy thought for a while and said seriously, it's not satisfied with the original plot development. It violated the rules and made corrections to the details in an attempt to get a different result. Unfortunately, a person's power is limited after all. No matter how much effort you put in, most of it will only be in vain. Wait! Huaishur finally reacted. He subconsciously got up from the bed, raised his head, and got close to Tanguy's face. He couldn't believe it. You said that the Bifrost can reverse time. Is it true? Of course. Tanguy asked in confusion. After all, it's one of the 3 major blockades. It's a huge achievement that the Astronomy Society is proud of. If it's just a portal with Wi-Fi, it's too useless. Although the conditions for using it are very harsh, if it's used properly, it can even send the entire present situation back to a year ago. That exaggerated, it's just a name. Although it can be achieved according to calculations, the cost of interfering with the scale of the entire world and the burning of the source substance is something that even the entire present situation can't afford. I'm afraid that the present situation will collapse before the teleportation is completed. At that time, what's the difference between a pile of ashes and a year ago and destruction? Therefore, the things that those lunatics in the Utopia researched were either of little value or of wonders. Each one was more prodigal than the other. However, limited by the cost, although it can't be used on a large scale, if it's cut a little and the expectations are lowered a little, there will occasionally be unexpected surprises. Thus, what was achieved was the miracle of time jump. At the cost of the eternal vitality of the entire green space and dense forest, the entire area was completely turned into a desert. The source substance and future heat were extracted to send a person's consciousness and soul back to their own body 24 days ago. Therefore, secret personnel such as the Doomsday Sentinels were born. In the Book of Destiny, when the quill pen reached this point, it paused for a moment and tapped on the page. The large paragraph of text suddenly became thin, as if it was in between existence and non-existence. With the God's wedge in hand, Tanguy could temporarily avoid the Astronomical Association's confidentiality measures, such as the Silencer Stone Tablet and Mimetic Blockade. However, she still couldn't continue to write in detail. She could only give Huaishur a general understanding. After a long time, Huaishur came to a realization. In other words, the Astronomical Association reloaded the file in order to save the Doomsday inner circle? What are you thinking about? Tanguy glanced at him with a strange expression. This isn't cost-effective at all, okay? Do you know how precious a soul that can be born to resonate with the Bifrost and withstand the reversal of time is? Every time such a precious consumable is discovered, it's a treasure of the Astronomical Association. It's 10 times more precious than the entire Doomsday inner circle combined. How could it be wasted in such a place? Then, of course, it's against the law and acting on its own. Tanguy shrugged sympathetically and seemed to be implying something. I'm afraid that a retired police officer bypassed the Astronomical Association and directly forced the resonance to trigger the jump mechanism. Although I don't know what kind of price he paid, it definitely wasn't easy. Wait, you're not talking about that bastard Udongri, are you? Huaishur suddenly realized, and his whole body went numb. I was wondering how he knew that I was a spy. It turns out that this bastard dares to cheat in addition to cross-dressing. This is simply outrageous. I'll twist him and send him to the Astronomical Association tomorrow." After being angry for a long time, Weischer finally remembered. That's not right. What exactly is he after? Who knows? Why don't you ask him yourself? Tong Ji raised her hand and threw the empty milk tea to an unknown place. Then she rubbed her hands together and magically brought out a bowl of ice cream. The top of the ice cream was sprinkled with chocolate, biscuits, and fruit slices. She scooped up a spoonful and swallowed it together with the cherry on top. She narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. She sighed and ignored
It's good that the times
Weischer's
have changed.
stomach growling.
Weischer,
She said casually,
you have to
"Compared
thank
to that,
science.
I'm actually more worried about you." "Me?" Weischer laughed. "What do I have to worry about? What do you think?" Tangi calmly ate her ice cream, but her eyes were fixed on Weischer's eyes. After a long time, he helplessly looked away and shrugged. Confused, hesitant, uneasy, or angry, Tangi scrutinized his expression and couldn't help but shake her head. "Your origin substance is filled with uncertainty. Even the young arbiter of fate's stigmata has begun to seal up. Could it be because of the Danbo inner circle? To be honest, it's a bit annoying." Weischer sighed and collapsed back onto the bed. "My head hurts. That's normal. Spies are like this. It's much worse than being a traitor." Tangi said sympathetically, "See, that's where the interesting part is. Even though these two words have roughly the same meaning, the people involved feel completely different." She said, "Because they're fundamentally different. They both had to endure, but the things spies and traitors had to endure were completely different. A traitor's needs were always clear. Betrayal was just the price they had to pay in order to obtain what they wanted. But for a spy, betrayal was the end. All of their actions and goals were for the sake of their ultimate betrayal. Spies are often very painful, but a traitor's happiness is something that no one can imagine, because a traitor only needs to know how to live happily, but a spy can only be sad to the end. Even the betrayal isn't for their own sake." Tangi sighed sympathetically. "From this perspective, spies are indeed much crueler than traitors. What kind of twisted logic is that?" Weischer shook his head. I thought that you would feel the same way." Tangi shrugged. "After all, you've already experienced both of these feelings. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a contradiction, right?" Weischer was speechless. Tangi lowered her head and leaned in closer. Her cold breath brushed against Weischer's cheek, bringing with it the sweet scent of butter. However, her gaze was completely devoid of any charm. Instead, it was dignified and serious. It was as if she could peer into his soul and see what he was thinking. "Let me guess," she said. "You have two completely different impulses right now. Weischer. One makes you want to replace those incompetent people, take control of everything yourself, and make the situation better. For this reason, you must seize power and even challenge the officials of Ingzhou, even if you know that it won't end well. But the other impulse is telling you that it has nothing to do with you. You don't have to do so much. You're just a spy. Even if you complete the task, nothing will change. So, after getting some results to deal with it, you start to slack off. Anyway, even if the sky falls, there's the bureau to hold it up. There's also the overbearing president, who can always turn the tide, right?" Weischer rolled his eyes. "Isn't that good? I didn't say that it's not good, but it's just avoiding the problem." Tangi told him calmly, "If you let others make the choice for you, no matter what the outcome is, it's meaningless to you. You'll only feel confused, then hesitate, then feel pain. After the pain, you'll gradually get used to it. After getting used to it, you'll start to comfort yourself that everyone is the same, just because they can't help it. In the end, you'll start to compromise unknowingly and start to get used to everything you hate. You'll become a qualified member of society. And this is the beginning of depravity. Isn't it a little too much to call it depravity? Why sure was stubborn. Maybe I've matured? Why sure, if you've matured, I won't sympathize with you no matter how much pain you're in. On the contrary, even if you rush straight into the abyss, I'll still encourage you. But no matter what, you shouldn't just stand there. She stretched out her cold spoon and held it in front of Weischer's eyes, not allowing him to escape her gaze. Then she told the contractor in front of her, word by word, if you can't stand it, then change it. If you can't stand it, then do it yourself. You should do what you want to do. Weischer, she said, you're my contractor. You have the right to do so, and you should have the right to do so. Weischer froze in place. In the brief silence, Tanguy suddenly smiled happily and was no longer serious. The spoon in her hand was brought to his mouth, bringing with it melting cream and syrup. Do you want some? Weischer nodded subconsciously. The taste was as sweet as expected, with a hint of bitterness. He didn't know whether it was because he had finally relaxed or because he had made up his mind, but his originally tense mind gradually relaxed, and he felt sleepy. Before he closed his eyes, he watched the figure in front of him gradually disappear. He couldn't help but call out to her. Tanguy, Before she turned into a blackbird, she looked back and looked over. I'll try. Weischer told her seriously. Thank you. You're my contractor. You're welcome. Tanguy smiled handsomely and disappeared into the darkness. She left silently. As for Weischer, she closed her eyes. For some reason, he, who was gradually turning into a salted fish, was full of fighting spirit. From tomorrow onwards, he would do his best to cause trouble. He decided that the grand plan to change the Dombois inner circle would start with unifying Extreme Path. The next day, Weischer, who was woken up, opened his eyes. Before he could yawn, he saw 2 policemen rushing into the ward from the corridor and the action team behind them with live ammunition. The MPD badges on their chests were shining brightly under the morning sun, dazzling Weischer. Then, without waiting for him to speak, handcuffs were put on his wrists with a click. Weischer, you're under arrest. Chapter 734. The white paper doll was caught. In less than 5 minutes, the news had been passed to the 4 big bosses by the Jidao, who were guarding the ward to protect the rebels. Then, it quickly spread among the alliance. Everyone knew about the white paper doll, but everyone was curious as to why the white paper doll was caught. They wanted to discuss it with the 4 big bosses in the comment section. But now, the president didn't want to discuss it with everyone in the comments section. He even stuffed a few guys who spread the news the most fiercely into cement balls and sank them into the bay. It wasn't just the white paper doll. 3 minutes later, one news after another was sent to them. White paper doll from the white paper doll group. White paper doll from the Arita group. White paper doll from the Nakajima group. Nakajima Hiroshi from the Nakajima group. Hayakum Okinawa from the Heroic Hunter group, the backbone of the alliance, especially those who participated in the alliance meeting last night, had been taken away by the Metropolitan Police Department. They were said to assist in the investigation, and those people were suspected to different degrees in more than 30 different cases. But in fact, which Jidao was clean. Even the most innocent person, the paper doll, was implicated in the murder case of the Arasaka family. If they were really determined to do something, the MPD had 10,000 ways to target the inner circle of Danbois. But the problem was, what was the benefit of doing so? Every big boss had a lot of underlings who were used as scapegoats. Even the white paper doll, who had just arrived, as long as it was necessary, he didn't even need to say anything. Shanya would jump out and confess, it has nothing to do with the big boss. I killed the people. I kidnapped the big boss. Come and get me. Not to mention the subsequent chaos and terrible increase in the frequency of crime. What for? Not to mention the lackeys running errands under the Metropolitan Police Department. Those above the rank of Deputy Commissioner of the Police Department were all graduates from prestigious universities. After killing thousands of soldiers and horses, they held on to a secure job. They were the elites of society who could retire with a large sum of experience and annuity. Wasn't the job of a civil servant in Ingzhou good? Isn't it good for everyone to make some shady deals in private and get some unspeakable gray income? Why did they have to take the blame? Especially when the order was about to be issued, who would be stupid enough to stir up trouble at this time? Besides, would the Green Sun be happy if the hybrid alliance was gone? It was definitely not the Metropolitan Police Department's decision. Shogunate or Looming Hall, which one do you prefer? Sheng Tianmu smoked his pipe and looked at Thousand Leaves Ruji, who was sitting on the sofa. It's all possible. Qian Yilongair said, after all, it's within our expectations after what happened last night. It's been a long time since that scoundrel of mine caused such a big headache. On the table, Qianya's phone vibrated, and a message popped up which made him frown. The Luoha family is already on the move, but it is said that there are instructions from the Looming Hall behind them. That's normal. There should be guests coming soon. Sheng Tianmu said, I'm afraid this wave is a two-pronged attack. What are you going to do? Qian Yi and Long Air asked, do you have a plan? Isn't it just that? Didn't I die a long time ago? Dead people can't speak, so it would be a waste not to use it. Besides, isn't this all because of that bastard? Sheng Tianmu said coldly. This time, I'm afraid that the higher-ups want to take the opportunity to warn us old guys not to think about causing trouble before the president's order is issued. Most of us have nothing to do here. I'm afraid that all our efforts will be on the other side. He said, I'm afraid that the people who are caught will not have a good time. Even if they would not be arrested and brought to court, they would not have a good time. Along with his words, hurried footsteps could be heard in the corridor. Soon, a subordinate knocked on the door. President, 2 people came to the door and asked to meet you. According to your previous instructions, they have been brought to the reception room. In the office, the 2 people looked at each other and raised their eyebrows slowly. Together? Sheng Tianmu stood up and asked. Qian Yi nodded and followed behind him to the reception room. At the same time, a low-key car stopped at the entrance of the Metropolitan Police Department of Kyoto. The director of the Special Incident Investigation Department, who had been waiting for a long time, quickly went up to greet him, only to see the person in the car push open the door and get out. Mr. Ase, long time no see. The director bowed, only to see Mr. Ase, who was usually serious, waving his hand in a hurry. He didn't even have time to reply, and opened the back door. A figure that he had never seen before walked out of it and stood under the steps in front of the Metropolitan Police Department, looking up at the tall building in front of him. You look decent. Ase bowed and nodded, giving the director a look. The director was stunned for a moment and immediately bowed his head respectfully. Welcome to the two of you to guide the work. There's no need to say anything unnecessary. The distinguished guest, who had just gotten out of the car, retracted his gaze and glanced at them. Time is limited. Don't waste it. The plain gaze made the director feel heavy majesty. A drop of cold sweat oozed from his forehead, and he couldn't help but answer. Yes, please follow me. He led the two of them all the way into the Metropolitan Police Department. After hurriedly walking into the elevator, the director finally had time to look at Ase, who represented Looming Hall, to contact the Metropolitan Police Department. Ase, who was usually cold and majestic, stood obediently behind the visitor, bowed his head, and respectfully responded to the occasional question with a proper and humble attitude. Finally, he was free. Ase fell a step behind and whispered to the director. The impact of last night's incident was not small. Before the order is issued, Kyoto can't be in chaos. That lord came to inspect, specially. Don't make any mistakes. The director nodded in a hurry. Did you bring all the people? The director wiped his sweat and looked helpless. They're all in the interrogation room. I've questioned them. They're all tough bones. Passing by the closed door all the way, they could vaguely hear the arrogant shouts coming from inside. Arrest me if you have the ability. Where's the evidence? Is there any evidence? Last night, I just went to have a drink with my brothers. What's the matter? Our company is a legal organization. Officer, don't talk nonsense. The director's expression became gloomy, and he didn't know how to explain it. Ase's expression was calm, and he had already expected it. This group of extreme Tao had been in the police station many times, and they were all people who had nothing to fear. Some of them didn't even say a word, and directly said that they wanted to see a lawyer. As for some people who obviously had something on the MPD, they were also very tight-lipped this time. And the few team leaders who had been in contact with the Metropolitan Police Department in private also kept quiet out of fear about what happened at the Alliance conference this time. In the end, what they said was the usual, and it was after the torture. Everyone was either cursing, remaining silent, or begging in a low voice, "Sir, don't be like this. I still have family." Only a burst of laughter came from behind a half-opened door. It was exceptionally disharmonious. With a bang, the sound of a table being slammed was heard. The fortune teller said that the success of 10,000 generals depends on a single skeleton. I don't agree. The calm and low voice said, I think that those who come out to make a living should decide whether to live or die by themselves. When I was doing business with my brothers at the parking lot in front of the Cooking Demon competition, I didn't expect that I could get to this point today. You flatter me, you flatter me. It's just the courage of an ignorant man. If there's a chance, who would want to be an extreme Tao? While talking and laughing, the young man who was handcuffed to the table raised the paper cup in his hand and congratulated the policeman behind the table who was interrogating him. In short, cheers, police officers. I wish you all the best in your career in the MPD. There was a sound of agreement, and it was simply a happy and harmonious atmosphere. If those extreme Taoists could be as reasonable as Mr. Huaiji, we would have a lot less work to do. In the interrogation room, the bearded old policeman put down the pen in his hand and sighed. Do you want some more beer? It's almost lunchtime. Do you want to try the pork chop rice? Let me tell you, the pork chop rice is a specialty of the Metropolitan Police Department. You have to try it. As he spoke, he gave a look to the subordinate next to him, indicating that he should go out and prepare, but the subordinate stood there awkwardly. He frowned and gave another look. Then he finally turned around and saw the livid dean and the two strangers behind him. I told you to interrogate. Is this how you interrogate people, Sakaguchi? The dean asked coldly. You're really something. You're almost brothers with the trash of society. Impressive. Sakaguchi's expression twitched, and he lowered his head to bow. Before he could speak, he heard a voice behind him. Hey, sir, you can't say that. I'm still a suspect. A suspect. How did I become the trash of society? Besides, our Huaiji Trading Company pays taxes every year and has never had a bad record. We're an excellent company. Speaking of this, the young man's expression became sorrowful. Thanks to Mr. Sakaguchi, I deeply realized my mistake and am willing to fully cooperate with the police's inquiry. I know that everyone has prejudice against people like us, so please don't blame him. If there's anything wrong, blame it on me. The dean was furious and was about to scold him, but he saw that the other police officers beside him had a look of agreement. They were full of sympathy for the discrimination and injustice Mr. Huaiji had encountered. It was as if they had been King drugged. What the hell was this? The dean was about to fly into a rage and let this tramp see who the boss here was, but Ase, who was behind him, pressed down on his shoulder. Don't lose your composure. This is not an ordinary person. Ase sneered. Although he looks young, this is the leader of the Huaiji Trading Company. He wiped out the Tiger King squad in an hour and personally quelled the rebellion in my family. He's the favorite of the 5 big bosses. No, it should be the 4 big bosses now, right? Behind the table, Huaisher looked up and then looked at the person behind him. He couldn't help but burst into laughter. Ase's expression turned cold. What are you laughing at? Huaisher lowered his head, covered his mouth, and waved his hand. Sorry, I have a friend whose wife is about to give birth. In the silence, Ase's hand was on the hilt of the knife under his suit. Then he heard a voice behind him. All right, Ase, you guys can go out first. Let me talk to him. Ase was stunned for a moment and then nodded. After glancing at the dean, he motioned for everyone to follow him out. Immediately, he raised his hand and turned off the surveillance equipment inside. Finally, he closed the door respectfully. In the silence, Huaisher tilted his head and looked at the person behind the table. He raised his eyebrows and looked curious. Are you going to ask for my name next? Have you had enough fun? Huaisher? He saw that Amber was expressionless. Chapter 735. Under the light of the interrogation room. The new head of the Legion family, Legion Hoopa, who was wearing a black robe, looked down at the prisoner handcuffed here. The prisoner was also looking at her, his eyes blank. I don't know what you're talking about, sir. Before you pretend you don't know anything, can you change your name first? Legion, Hoopa coldly said. Other people don't remember this matter. Looked at the man. Do you think I've forgotten? And solemnly asked, Weisher couldn't help but roll his eyes. Are you here because of High Emperor? Sigh. What the hell? Earlier, Weisher was stunned for a long time. This trail. His head suddenly shook like a rattle drum. He wouldn't be able to collect. I don't even know what your High Emperor's name is. Oh my God! Why would I do anything for him? You invited me to Ingzhou. Not only did you not pay me after I finished the work, but I'm the Prince of Paradise. You also locked me up in the police station. Why would I do something like this for you? Thinking of if anyone else heard Weisher's disrespectful words, the table, they would probably arrange to steal the money of the Astronomy Association. However, you Ingzhou people have a terrible conscience. Didn't care about this at all. Silently looked at him. He continued to ask, put the phone on the table, it's because of those mixed and entered the number of the Astronomy Association's just think of it as Ingzhou Branch 1 by one in front of him for a long time. In the end, but she was stopped by Weisher with handcuffs. His expression became complicated. You can't. And he instinctively wanted to light a cigarette. The special agent from the headquarters was undercover right under the noses of the branch. Otherwise, once it was exposed, he wouldn't know how to deal with especially at this critical juncture. Who knew how big of a mess it would cause? Hoopa flipped through the report. How did you know I was here? And casually asked. Weisher was puzzled from the bottom of his heart. Very close with the daughter of the Legion family. Don't tell me you're playing almost sleeping on the same bed when you have nothing to do. How can you speak empty words and sully my innocence? Almost all of the Wu family's officials are paying attention to the capital. Not to mention a new head like me. Thinking of the trouble, I'm also a member of the looming hall now. Next. Gave him a terrible didn't headache. Mention it. He sighed. Weisher, I don't care what you do. Stinky's sister was if you don't get involved too much. The head of Enfant, the waters of the No Matter Order, and the gold medal of Dongxia. I'm afraid it's not. It was just a small bridge of friendship between the two countries separated by water and Xiaoying. Weisher blinked his eyes. The trouble you caused last night. Do you really think it wasn't big enough? Made the hound god armor appear on Hoopo's back. Luckily, I was here today. He almost wanted to hack this bastard to death. I thought I was blind. In the long silence. So when you said goodbye, coldly stared you planned to meet me after a long time. Police station. He suddenly opened his mouth. A coincidence. She said, Weisher smiled. I'll help you. You help me. As the saying goes, people in the martial arts world have no choice. She said, if you insist on getting involved in this matter, I can use my status to help you. You even want a medal in the No Matter Order is given. You must. What are you trying to do now? Completely eliminate the Iron King faction. No matter what understanding of this guy. Wherever this guy went, there would be a 3-foot wave. Isn't the Iron King faction everything the lackeys of your looming hall? And wherever you already said that everything would explode of the looming hall. After finding out that he was wandering around the capital, Hoopa sneered. Hoopa was so Do you think scared there's no conflict he almost wanted to increase the security in the of the Imperial Palace? Weisher looked at her in shock. After a long time, he asked from the bottom of his heart, why isn't your looming hall finished yet? Look at the Dongxia family tree, and then look at your Ingzhou family tree. Not to mention the size, just the office atmosphere and human relations are 100,000 streets away. How can this dog have the heart of a dog and the face of a dogfight with others? This is called corporate culture. Why sure? Hoopo's phone spun around his fingertips, and the number of the Astronomy Society was faintly discernible. Help or not? Weisher shook his head and sighed helplessly. Let's be honest. You want me to help you deal with the Iron King faction with just one sentence. I'm also a small fry now. It's really difficult to deal with. He spread out his hands, looking like he wanted to help, but couldn't. He was waiting for Hoopa to add money. However, Hoopa seemed to believe him and nodded understandingly. If that's the case, then the matter of the balance. Help. With a bang, Weisher slammed his hand that wasn't cuffed on the table and said righteously, let me tell you, Weisher can't stand beautiful girls asking me for help the most. As the saying goes, rely on your parents at home and rely on your friends when you go out. In my heart, my friends are like my parents. I'll definitely help you today. Although his words were quite good, the feeling inside was a bit wrong no matter how he thought about it. Hoopa looked at him for a long time and finally reached out his hand. Then, happy cooperation. Happy cooperation. Forgetting the previous unpleasantness, the white paper figure, who had successfully colluded with Master Gongqing and colluded with him, revealed a harmless smile. Suddenly, the curtains of the meeting came to an end in a jubilant atmosphere. After Huai Shi finished his pork chop rice, he wiped his mouth before he patted his butt and prepared to leave. He couldn't help but ask casually, "By the way, since we've already colluded, helped each other, then in the future, won't we have to rely on you to take care of our group?" As a bad premonition gradually surfaced, Hoopa felt a headache coming on again. She began to think, who was the one who became the other's tool in this wave? Maybe I should just report him to the police. In reality, it didn't take long for everyone to be released. After all, they didn't really want to make an example out of the hybrid alliance. It was just a warning and punishment after they noticed the fight near the city last night. "Little brother, you guys went overboard, got it? Take a beating. Go through the process, and it'll be over." However, coming to the police station could allow his illegal career to take a big step forward. It was really beyond Huai Shi's expectations. Thinking about the good days of colluding with Hoopa in the future, he couldn't help but want to sing. However, he soon noticed that the gazes around him were strange. There was a faint sense of disgust and contempt among all the people released. There were very few who didn't have bloodstains and bruises on their bodies. There was also no one who was as smug as Huai Shi, walking as if he was floating. He was even smiling, not to mention the way he warmly said goodbye to the few police officers at the door. "This dog, don't tell me he sold everyone out? Traitor." If it weren't for the fact that they were at the entrance of the Metropolitan Police Department, the few big brothers would have already taken the place of the president to chop off his dog head. It's not what everyone thinks. Huai Shi quickly raised his hand to explain, but he really didn't know how to let everyone understand the difference between a person's charm and likability. Before he could think of a way to explain, he felt his phone vibrate violently. It was a call from the finance department of Huai Shi Group, Otaku Jian. The voice sounded anxious. "Oh no, Group Leader Huai Shi Group. Something happened at the foot of the mountain." Otaku Jian said anxiously, "In the morning, Rua too went to receive the assets assigned by the president, but he was detained by the new Luo group." Huai Shi raised his eyebrows. At the headquarters of the alliance, Sheng Tianmu and Chiba politely and respectfully sent the two guests to the door. After a round of warm greetings, Sheng Tianmu sent the two guests to the car with a smile on his face. He waved his hand and watched the car gradually disappear into the distance until it disappeared at the end of his vision. His smile gradually disappeared. "A bunch of greedy bastards," Chiba said coldly. "It seems like they've already predicted that we won't be able to hold on for long. They're in a hurry to squeeze the last bit of profit out of us. It's just a business deal. Don't mind it, Chiba-kun." Sheng Tianmu waved his hand indifferently. "It's just spending money to buy time. For the current us, is there a better deal than this?" Just as they were talking, their phones rang at the same time. Not long after, Sheng Tianmu nodded and hung up the phone. He turned to look at Chiba. "It seems like the masters are still keeping their word. They've already released the person 10 minutes ago. Later, I'll have to trouble you to arrange for someone to go over and organize a dinner for everyone tonight. We can't let them suffer for nothing." Chiba wanted to say something but stopped. Her expression was complicated. "What's wrong?" Sheng Tianmu turned around and looked at her. "This," Chiba replied, awkwardly. "There's a mistake on my side. That bastard from the new Luo group saw that the Huai Zhiji figurine was taken away, So he had thoughts that he shouldn't have. Without my permission, he took over the property that was allocated to the Huaishiji group and injured 2 people. Oh, is that so? Sheng Tianmu's expression became strange. Then I'm sorry. Please don't take it to heart. Chiba Longair was stunned for a while. Then he became nervous and bowed, explaining seriously, "No, I didn't know about this at all. I don't have any dissatisfaction with the president. I just hope that you can forgive the new Luo group for their hard work over the years. I'll definitely punish them heavily when I get back." Longair, are you misunderstanding something? Sheng Tianmu quickly helped him up. "I'm not dissatisfied with you. You and I have known each other for so many years. If I was really angry, why would I be so sarcastic?" Then, Chiba was confused. "What I mean is, there's nothing I can do about this." Sheng Tianmu spread his hands and sighed, helplessly, judging by the speed of the Huaishiji group. "I'm afraid that the new Luo group won't be able to wait for you to punish them heavily when you get back. It's hopeless. Just wait for death. Goodbye." Chapter 736. After hanging up the phone, Huaisher looked down at his phone in silence. He didn't expect that after sitting in the police station for 4 hours, someone would start to have ideas about his share of the cake. However, the so-called Extreme Tao was such a cold and realistic place. Even if it was covered in a chivalrous and benevolent outer shell, it couldn't change its cold nature. As early as last night, less than 3 hours after Jojo died, Jojo's family was dismantled by the remaining 4 bosses. After the core industries were divided up by the bosses and was too lazy to continue wasting time was still shocking enough. What about as the most outstanding group? At the foot of the mountain, group was the first to get their share of the rich bonus. Huaisher asked, "Too popular nightclubs, a horse racing track, or alive and the title deeds of the 3 shopping malls the person on the other entire floor snorted. After a burst of noise, there was the sound of a door being pushed over, the foundation and something heavy fell to the ground. To expand their business and strengthen their strength. Another burst of noise. The title deeds could provide long-term funds. What a tough guy. And the horse racing track was a treasure bowl that could make people rich overnight. Your team leader after new Luo group took the lead in occupying one of his nightclubs. Team leader. There were even problems with the title deeds sounded from the foot of the racing track. It's me. You can't blame others if you can't take what the bosses gave you. Then it some of the other group leaders had at least been picked up by their underlings for the president. Those who didn't leave weren't when I'm not here. Don't argue with people about this kind of place was otherwise they won't be able to get the thing back and watch from the side in vain. There was nothing happier in this world than seeing someone else's misfortune and told him, especially when everyone else was in trouble. Leave the rest to me. Only this person could still laugh out loud. There was a faint retribution is coming. Baby. Soon. The voice sounded again. Didn't have to wait too long. Hey, brother Huaishi. Soon. I heard it all. A phone number was sent. The leader of the new Luo group sneered. It was the number of the new Luo group's leader. Too harsh? Huaisher dialed, be more straightforward. But no one picked up for a long time until the call was automatically station now. Huaisher calmly broadcasted the call again. No one took me to jail. Automatically hung up again. What are you going to do? It wasn't until the third time that or take advantage of the situation. So troublesome. It's up to you to choose. I'm still busy here. As soon as the unhappy became tough, the tone on the other end became helpless. Huaisher opened her mouth, and I didn't pay attention. I'm just a plain brother Huaiji is out. This inappropriate? It's embarrassing for me to keep it. The person on the other end was changed the topic. Then, however, he vaguely heard him talking to the person next to him. If you take Did you hear that and ask me to spit it out, you have to leave something for me, right? Okay. Soon, the voice sounded again. How much do you want to leave? It was as if the speaker had been turned on. How about that? And it instantly became of the new Luo group said, "We can be considered friends. I'm so sorry. In the future, we can also, and you're in a hurry to drink the wine. Please forgive me." Interrupted him and told him, asked, "How about talking face to face?" It was an accident. It's too insincere to talk over the phone. "How about this? Okay, you come. Brother Huaishi, the leader of the new Luo group, understood the meaning in his words. Why don't I treat you to a meal and sneered and help you get rid of the bad luck?" After he gave an address, talk about this. He hung up the phone. Huaisher put away his phone and put it in the pocket of his hospital gown. He was directly taken out of the hospital by the police and did not have time to change his clothes. "Let's go," he said to Shangya. "Don't let him wait for too long." Shangya, who had just removed the bandages and rushed over from the hospital, still had stitches on his face. When he heard Huaisher's words, he could not help but be stunned. "Aren't you going to change your clothes?" "No need. White clothes are just right. With some stripes, it looks playful, dignified, and lively. Isn't that good?" Huaisher waved his hand and nodded to the other leaders who had not left. "Then, let's meet again tonight. We'll have a drink and catch up." Watching Huaisher get into the car, the people who stayed behind looked at each other. Next, there would be a good show to watch. The meeting place was called Cicada Live House. It was one of the most popular nightclubs in the Dongshan district of the capital. At the same time, it was also the place that Sheng Tianmu had assigned to Huaisher Group. After robbing Huaisher of his things, he asked Huaisher to meet at his place. Shangya knew that this meeting would not end well. After calling for someone, before getting out of the car, he took out a pistol from the toolbox, checked the bullets, and put it in his pocket. "Are you so cautious?" Huaisher looked at him from the passenger seat and shook his head. "There's no need." Shangya reminded him seriously, the leader of New Luo Group is not a good person. Who knows how many times he's done evil. He's very vicious. "Boss, you have to be careful." "Is that so? What a coincidence. I also like to do evil. We'll definitely have a lot in common." Huaisher pushed open the car door and walked up the stairs. During the day, when it was not time to open for business, the front was empty. There was no sign of the queue at night. It was dark behind the open door, and there were not many lights turned on. A few cleaners were still mopping the floor and doing chores. Only a waiter in uniform stood in front of the door and looked at Huaisher. "I'm here to see the people from New Luo Group," Huaisher said. "Lead the way." The waiter glanced at the two of them. When he saw the hospital gown on Huaisher, he frowned. "I'm sorry, sir. Our humble shop does not serve disheveled guests." When he spoke, his expression was dignified and serious, as if he did not know who Huaisher was. However, he could not hide the panic in his eyes. Obviously, he had received instructions from the inside to show Huaisher who he was and make him lose face. Shangya was furious. He wanted to pull his collar, but Huaisher held his shoulder. He patted Shangya, indicating for him to calm down. Then he turned around and asked, "What's considered neat?" The waiter was stunned. He was prepared to be beaten up, but he did not expect the other party to have such a good temper. He was at a loss for a long time before he continued. "There has to be at least a tie." "A tie? I have one." Huaisher smiled. "I even took it from the Metropolitan Police Department. I don't know if it meets your standards." As he spoke, he reached out and took out a pair of shiny handcuffs from the pocket of his hospital gown. He lifted it up, shook it, and threw it to Shangya beside him. "Help me put it on for him." Shangya smiled. "Okay." The waiter's expression changed drastically. The two guards behind the door rushed out and were about to say something when they saw Huaisher casually push one of them forward, then another. In the sound of bones breaking, the two of them groaned at the same time. They involuntarily knelt on the ground and vomited blood from their lungs. They could no longer breathe. "Look, there are two more ties. Put them on for this one." Huaisher lowered his head and glanced at the person beside his feet. Then he turned around and ordered Shangya. Shangya grinned, revealing a mouth full of shark teeth. He smiled happily. Then he punched the waiter's head. Ignoring the waiter's struggle, he pressed him against the bronze handle of the door. The handcuffs went around the waiter's neck cleanly. After 2 clicks, An iron tie was put on. Then 2 uniform ties were put on the waiter's neck. His face was flushed red. "Is this enough?" Huaisher lowered his head and asked. The waiter panted with difficulty. His hands struggled wildly, but he couldn't break the handcuffs on his neck. He could only nod his head vigorously and plead with his eyes. Thus, Huaisher nodded, retracted his gaze, and walked through the door. Behind him, Shangya looked at his masterpiece carefully. He was proud of it, and even took out his phone to take a photo. Then he hurriedly followed him. Along the way, they were unobstructed. Finally, they saw Shangya, who was thrown on the ground and panting beside the dance floor. There were also 2 people who were kicking and hitting him. In the booth, a middle-aged man smoking a cigar turned around and raised his eyebrows. "Hey, you're really here?" The leader of New Luo Group laughed, mockingly. "Not bad looking. You're the pretty boy from Huaiji Group?" Huaisher continued forward as if he didn't hear anything. He just reached out and took out a gun from Shangya's pocket. Then he aimed at the man's head and pulled the trigger. There was a bang. Then the gun turned and aimed at the other people who still had a mocking smile on their faces. Bang, bang, bang. After 3 loud bangs, it was over. After the crisp sound of the bullet shells falling to the ground, there was no more noise. In the short silence, Huaisher lowered his head and stared at the mocking face. He nodded slightly. "Yes, I am," he replied politely. Then there were screams. Not far away, a few people collapsed on the ground. There were also people who wanted to rush up and take revenge for their leader. Shangya had already taken the gun from Huaisher's hand and showed them the shark teeth he was so proud of. In the blink of an eye, the fire lit up and went out. When the extreme Dao experts who were lying in ambush rushed out, everything was over. Only that man sat on the chair next to the corpse. He picked up the whiskey on the table and drank it. After putting down the bottle, he looked at them. He raised his beast-like eyes. Both sides are satisfied with the result. Is there anyone else who wants to talk to me? The devil-like man sat in the dark. Chapter 737. At this time, someone should stand up and shout, "Take revenge for our team
After
leader."
a brief moment of silence,
Then, a clear
everyone should be
motivated
sound
to take
came
revenge
from the
for their
corpse's
team
pocket.
leader and
Everyone
fight it out
lowered
with
their
the despicable
heads.
people from
Weisher
YG
waved
Group.
his hand,
But when that
and
pair of
motioned for
eyes
them
looked
to
at
rest
him,
assured.
even the air
When
seemed
Ruo
to
Tu took out his
freeze.
phone,
No one
couldn't
spoke
help
but gasp.
They were frozen
He was
on the
dumbfounded.
spot. The
Even
money
if they
was
had
really in the
10
account.
times more people
Ruotu's
and
face
100
became
times
more
and more
firepower.
ugly.
Does anyone
He
have any
raised his head with
objections?
difficulty
Weisher
and
asked.
looked at Weisher.
I prefer to speak.
He didn't
think
frankly
that the man in front
if
of
there's
him
anything
was a
you're not
righteous
satisfied
man
with,
or a
you
saint
can
who
say
kept
it
his
directly.
promise.
Nor did he
Along
really
with his
think
words
that he was a good
a
man
scream came
who
from
kept
outside
his
the
word.
door,
But
followed
no
by
matter
the
how
sound
he
of
thought
heavy
about it,
footsteps.
he couldn't understand.
The members of
Why did he
Weisher
still
Group
have to do this?
had already
In the
entered
dead
with
silence.
their guns and
Weisher
cannons.
picked up the second
They
bottle
took
of
control
bourbon that the
of
waiter
everything
sent
from
over
the
with
outside
trepidation.
to the inside.
He poured
In
himself
the
a drink,
silence,
and
no
suddenly
one spoke.
asked,
Only
"Now,
the
can
sound
this
of
store be
blood
considered
dripping
as
on the
something that
steps of the
belongs
dance
to me?"
floor
could be
Ruo
heard.
Tu swallowed
The
his
scarlet
saliva
color
stiffly
spread
and
reflected
reflected
in
in the man's
Then,
eyes.
we've completed
The
a
fleeting
deal.
scarlet color
Weisher picked
seemed
up
to have
another glass
incredible magic
and put it
revealing
in his
the
hand.
ferocious nature
He raised
of
his
the evil
hand
spirit
and
under
clinked
the
glasses with
exquisite
him.
disguise.
Have a good
It
deal.
accumulated
That pair of
brutality
quiet
and
eyes
power,
looked at him
waiting to be
quietly
released,
and
waiting
liberated.
silently until
It
he
only
couldn't
needed
say
a small
anything
spark.
anymore.
After
He
some
drank
time,
up the wine
someone took a
in
step
the glass.
Then,
Have a good
there
deal.
was the sound
Very
of a
good.
knife falling
Now,
to the ground.
it's time for the second
Under
question.
Shangya's shout,
Everyone
leaned
gradually
on the chair,
put down their weapons,
lowered his head,
and raised
and
their
looked at
hands
him
with ashen
carefully.
faces. He asked
Very
curiously,
good.
"Why didn't you
that
wear a
everyone
tie
is
when you came to my
reasonable.
store?"
Weisher nodded.
In the afternoon,
Then,
before they could
is there
recover
anyone
from
in
the industrial
charge here?
dispute and the
The
fight
leader
for
of New
territory,
Luo Group
is
two
gone.
pieces of news
Ruo
spread
Tu,
to every
right?
alliance
Who
member
is
like
he?
a bomb.
Everyone
The first
looked at
news
the
was that
man
the industrial
behind the crowd.
dispute between
The
New
man's
Luo
face
Group
suddenly turned
and
ugly.
YG Group
He opened his
was
mouth
successfully
and wanted to
resolved.
say something.
New Luo
but in
Group
the end,
got
he
25
closed
million
it.
from
He
YG
pushed the
Group.
people in front of him
YG
away
Group actually
and
lowered
walked
their heads
forward and
I'm him,
obediently gave
he
the
said.
money. For a
Weisher
time,
looked down at
the
the beer
position of
bottle
the
in his
late
hand
New Luo
and
Group's
suddenly
leader
asked,
in Jianghu
"Did you hear
was
what I said to
strengthened
your team
and
leader
promoted
before?"
unprecedentedly.
Ruo Tu
This
nodded
last
with a
deal
pale
was really
face.
worth it.
Very
Every
good.
member of
Then
New
let's do
Luo
it.
Group shared
Weisher
this
nodded.
joy. They
Just
held the
like what I
red
said
packets
before,
in their
according
hands
to New
and felt
Luo's
proud
last
for a
wish.
moment.
In
Half of the store's
contrast,
revenue
the second
will be
news
given
was
to him
really
in the
not worth
future.
mentioning.
How much
From
will
then
it cost
on,
to buy
there
it
was
all
no
at
more
once?
New Luo Group.
On the phone,
Under the sincere
Takashi
request
pressed
of
the
all the
calculator
leaders
for a long time
and the
before
unanimous
he said,
agreement
according to the
and
previous
request of
turnover
all the
and
members,
estimates,
everyone
in 4 years,
resolutely carried
excluding
out
the other
the new
shareholders
leader's
and
orders.
operating expenses,
Then
we can
the
earn about
territory,
40 million US
manpower,
dollars
and
in the most
assets
ideal
of
situation.
New Luo Group.
Half
were all
25
incorporated
million.
under YG Group.
Is there enough money
Not
in the
only did they
account?
take the money
Weisher
and jump
asked,
ship,
the
but they
Yamada
also
Society's
expanded their
follow-up
territory.
payment has already
New Luo
arrived
Group
yesterday.
made a huge profit
It's
this
enough
time.
for the time being.
And YG Group lost a
Otaku
lot.
said,
Call them
everyone
then.
praised
You
the
have to keep your
wise
word.
and far-sighted decision
Why
of the
sure
higher-ups.
propped up his chin
At this time,
and casually
it
waved
had
his
only
finger.
been 1.5
Hire a
hours
few more
since
eminent monks
Weisher
for
walked
him
out
by
of the
a few
Metropolitan
Darman
Police
names
Department.
and find a
The
good
news
place
of
for
New
him to
Luo
go to
Group's
paradise.
leader's death had already been sent to the 4 big shots table. What does everyone think? Sheng Tianmu asked. There's no need to avoid my relationship with Huai Ji. Although I'm the president, everyone can speak freely here. The authoritative editor wanted to discuss with everyone in the comments section. However, no one said anything. Under Sheng Tianmu's silent gaze, Huang Chuan put down the cigar in his hand and sighed. He took the lead to take on the role of the bad guy. Previously, the Tiger King group could use revenge as an excuse. However, no matter what, they went overboard this time, right? In the past, internal conflicts without the permission of the 5 big shots would result in death. The female leader of the Luoha family nodded in agreement. Huai Ji went overboard this time. What about Qian Yi? Sheng Tianmu asked. What do you think? Qian Yi Long smoked expressionlessly. In the end, he put out the cigarette in the ashtray and said, New Luo Group is my people. This time, it's my fault for not disciplining them properly. I'm responsible. But why Jiren killed his own ally without permission? That's really too unruly, isn't it? Sheng
Tianmu finished his sentence for him. After a short silence, the old man sighed. I know everyone thinks that I value Huaixi and won't let anything happen to him. In fact, I plan to do this. However, I can't allow the rules of the alliance to be broken. I agree with your views on this matter. The others were stunned for a moment. If that's the case, Sheng Tianmu suddenly said, however, before that, I hope everyone can take a look at this. The secretary walked forward and distributed the information that had just been printed to everyone. Since last night, after the fall of Zhou family, the remaining loyal members of Zhou family have launched 4 counterattacks. However, these are not worth mentioning. They have all been extinguished. However, internal conflicts and conflicts within the alliance, including this time between Huaixi Group and New Luo Group, have occurred a total of 13 times. There were 11 instances where blood was spilled and a total of 3 instances where names were made public. 2 of the group leaders have been punished by me personally. Their fingers are here. Sheng Tianmu raised his hand and threw 2 small boxes on the table. His expression was calm. However, this is not something that can be solved with 2 fingers and a few heads. In the silence, everyone looked at the information in their hands and frowned. Even under the suppression of the alliance, the conflicts and conflicts caused by Zhou family's business still appeared. Wealth moved people's hearts. Of course, there was a reason for this. In fact, a few of the families had accumulated grudges before this. To be able to maintain stability in such a short period of time without causing more trouble, it could be said that they were strong enough. However, this could not hide the violation of the rules. Rules were the key to the survival of an extreme path organization. However, when they abandoned the laws of society and went into the dark, they relied more on the existence of rules. Only when there were rules could the game be played, and everyone's existence could last for a long time. Now, as the shadow of the president's order of nothingness pressed down day by day, under the suppression of the other organizations, everyone had already seen the signs of chaos within the alliance. This cannot be allowed to happen. The female general of Luo family said coldly, I think we need to deal with it strictly. I agree. Huang Chuan did not disagree, which was rare for him. Qian Yilong was silent for a long time. Then he smiled bitterly and shook his head. He looked at Sheng Tianmu. I think you already have a plan, President, right? I think that instead of using force to suppress them, it's better to follow the will of the people. Sheng Tianmu opened his mouth and said, the rules in the past were to maintain stability. However, in this situation, is stability still necessary? No one is confident. Since we can't see the future, we can only look at the present. Even if we suppress this wave, what can we do? It's better to let it go. Even if there are problems in the future, we can take care of them after this wave. The old man raised his head and said seriously, it's true that rules are very important, but the essence of extreme Tao is the survival of the fittest. If we even forget this rule, what's the difference between us and being a tyrant in a rat's nest? Since someone is not satisfied with the distribution, then let's see what we can do. Huang Chuan instinctively wanted to object, but he did not say anything. Luaha Riko's expression changed, but he remained silent in the end. While thinking, Qian Yilong finally reacted. Hey, old man, are you planning to train your troops before the president's order of nothingness? We're used to having a stable time. It'll take some effort to make them remember that they're extreme paths that can't be exposed. They still have to put their heads on their belts. Sheng Tianmu knocked on his pipe and lowered his eyebrows. Just treat it as training for the children. We have to let them know that we have some guts. As long as they don't use their guns, the damage won't be too big. It's all within the acceptable range. There's no need to talk about the things that have already been distributed. At the very least, everyone can take out the things that haven't been distributed. As for the dignity of the alliance, there's no need to worry. If this place is relaxed, other places can be tightened. Everyone can also take this opportunity to clean up the people with ulterior motives and take advantage of the situation. Prepare for war. As he spoke, Shang Tianmu unhurriedly laid out the rules that he had drawn up long ago. It was as if he had prepared everything long ago. No one knew how long he had been preparing this for. Moreover, it was obvious that he had already made arrangements for the division of benefits and the division of authority. There was no reason to object. Moreover, everyone was already dissatisfied with the current situation of the alliance. In the end, Huang Chuan, who was the slowest to react, finally remembered. Damn it, in the end, aren't they just protecting the paper effigy? They're even giving him a reward in disguise. Chapter 738. In the afternoon, in the office of Huaiji Trading Company. These should be the contents of the announcement at tonight's banquet. Sheng Tianmu's voice came from the phone. Huaiji, the news has been revealed to you. Don't drop the ball when the time comes. Okay, I understand. Huaishe replied respectfully. Thank you for your protection. I can't thank you enough. Sheng Tianmu seemed to laugh. It was hard to tell whether that low external and vague voice was filled with joy. The old man would not allow a young boy to jump around in front of him. Between you and me, there's no I don't intend to let a bunch of old fellows ride on my head. Said. He paused for a moment. I've given you the opportunity you wanted. The president will take turns. Up to you whether you can grasp it. It will be my house. Is
Isn't
there
Injo's
anything wrong with
tradition
that?
that the weak should
Shanya
do
was
the
stunned.
strong? His
Why
jaw
sure
dropped
asked
curiously.
What's wrong?
The president
Why
is
sure
so
laughed.
indulgent towards
You can't
me.
accept it?
Isn't he afraid
No,
that I'm a
I-
shameless
I-
person
I-
who doesn't know how to
Shanya
be
was so
grateful
anxious
and
that
will
his speech
backstab
was
him?
incoherent.
Ha ha ha!
Don't
He even
joke around.
changed the way he
Why
addressed
she?
himself.
Who else can
In the
give you
end,
as much as I
he
do?
was so agitated that the scar
Shengtianmu
on his
sneered.
face turned red.
You want to replace
He
my
bowed
position in
abruptly
the alliance?
and replied in a
The
loud
courage
voice.
you is
I'm
not
sorry.
enough.
He bowed
Such a
deeply
naive dream.
and said,
Let's talk
no
about
matter
it in
what
3
happens,
years.
I will
Why
follow
sure
you for
raised
the rest
his
of my
eyebrows.
life. I think
Why
it
sure
won't take a
paused
year.
for a moment.
It's okay.
He raised
We'll
his
wait
eyebrows
and see.
as if he was stunned.
The old man
Soon,
on the other end
he
of the
smiled,
phone laughed,
stood up,
this time
and
it was
patted
full
him
of
on
joy.
the shoulder.
Dambo Inner
Don't be so
Circle is
agitated.
such a narrow
Shanya,
place. I
when
know
can it
your
not
loyalty
accommodate
to
you?
me. The
I'll
phone
be
call
counting on
ended.
you in the
Weisher looked
future.
up at the gradually
Shanya
dimming
nodded
sunlight
and bowed
outside
deeply
the window.
again. He
Only
turned
then
back
did he bid farewell
and threw the phone on the
excitedly
table
and turned
he
to leave.
smiled
After
at
the
Shanya,
office door closed,
who was fidgeting behind the
Weisher's
table.
smile gradually
Did
disappeared.
you hear that?
It was
It's
replaced
just a small
by
matter.
unconcealable
Don't worry about
astonishment.
it.
He
Returning
patted
to his
Shanya's
chair,
shoulder.
he frowned,
indicating that he
his
didn't need to
consciousness
worry.
used
Young
the matter
Master
of New
Ming's
Luo
stigmata
group
as a
is
bridge to
over.
explore the
You
other
go
cage of
back
dreams
and cooperate with the
people at
Then,
the foot of the mountain
he realized
to integrate
that it was a
the
mess.
newcomers. While he
It's
was busy
best
undercover,
if they can be of use.
Weisher did
If
not
they
pay
can't,
attention to the
then
group
just
of
get rid of
crows.
them.
As
Tell
a result,
them that
they had
YG Trading
completely
Company
gone
can do
crazy
more
from
good
playing.
deeds.
Every day
They have enough
they
beer,
would secretly
but
disguise themselves as
YG
normal
Trading Company
crows after
doesn't
using
raise
source
useless
substance
people.
and blend
They
in
won't
with the
even
local
quench
crows.
the thirst
Then,
of unrelated
relying on their
people.
physique and strength,
Yes,
they would frequently
Shanya
appear in the
bowed
streets
and respectfully
alleys, convenience
accepted the
stores,
order.
video stores,
However,
and bookstores.
he didn't leave.
In the end,
He wanted to
they
say
would
something,
secretly bring
but
back
stopped.
a huge pile
What's
of
wrong?
unspeakable items
Weisher
that
raised his
piled up
head.
like a mountain.
After hesitating
There was
for a
even
long
a group of
time,
fanatics who
Shanya
secretly
finally
pulled
asked
out the
uneasily,
wires
"Boss,
and picked
what you
up
said
old
on the phone just
televisions
now,
and
is it
video
true?
players that people did not want
What
from
are
the
you
streets.
talking about?
They would watch
That's
it day
right, that's
and
right.
night.
Shanya
As for the
stuttered
other
and
group of
finally
crows that
mustered
did
up the
not
courage to
participate
repeat
much, they were not
Weisher's
good
words.
either. Now,
It's
they
the
were
part where
circling
the
the lower
phones that
one
Weisher
succeeds
had
the
left
upper
for
one
them to play
and
with.
replaces the
Then,
president. Their
do you
little
really
claws
plan to-
skillfully swiped
Oh, yes,
across
that's
the
right.
screen. Along with the
Weisher
colors
twirled
of the
the pen in
various
his
mobile
hand,
game interface,
not hiding
they were
anything.
enthusiastically
Although I have an
cheering.
agreement with the old
Once
man,
they got SSR,
I'm afraid the
they would be as
honeymoon
happy
period of
as
this
a lark.
cooperation will only
Moreover,
last until the end
these
of the
guys had
General
learned
Assembly.
their lesson. Right. They were afraid that they would be discovered secretly spending money on Weisher's account. So they relied on picking up coins from the streets and going to convenience stores to buy top-up cards. Who the hell knew how they managed to activate these things at the counter? Moreover, these crows would take turns coming. Every time they came, it would be as if they had lost their parents. When they encountered a group of crows that sold goods, they would run around with their phones in their mouths, as if they wanted to see every single one of them. Very quickly, they would be pinned to the ground and beaten up. But this was F***ing enough. Weisher calculated for a moment. Women, those who drew cards, and those who soaked in the decaying dream poison pool every day. Her large group of women, gambling, and poison had all been gathered together. What kind of group was this? Weisher was so angry that his face turned green. He wanted to immediately start a rectification movement, but now he did not have the time to do that. Most of his energy was focused on the lower level of the dream cage, the newly opened area. Within the projection of young Master Ming's stigmata, a group of vague, human silhouettes appeared. The degree of clarity varied, but one of the clearest faces left a deep impression on Weisher. Bueno, damn, why is his projection here? Weisher was completely dumbfounded. The cage of dreams was bound to his stigmata, and Weno's projection appeared here. This meant that he was already within the range of young Master Ming's destiny. What was going on? Isn't this very simple? Tangi's figure appeared beside him. Her smile became strange. Don't tell me you've forgotten. Weisher, the growth of a child is a symbol of the growth of a child. The growth of a race can be placed above the infernal realm, but why can't it be placed above humans?
The beast trait itself had the characteristics of the abyss. Didn't Maki Richimi prove this before? She was only able to step onto the path of ascension because of your guidance. Now, young Master Ming's destiny also has a part of her. You mean? Huaishur was dumbfounded. Speaking of which, in Ingzhou's extreme Tao, the word kinship is not only a form of respect for the boss, but also a form of father. Tangi's smile became more and more gloating. Those are your children. Huaishur. Ha 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 ha. That's not right. Why wasn't there before? Huaishur couldn't understand at all. Do you know how much weight an ascender's soul can carry with it the weight of a normal consciousness? Previously, the Huaishur group was the size of a pigeon's egg. There were 5 or 6 people, 7 or 8 guns. Taking everything into account, there were more than 100 people. Tangi said, after you merged with the new Luo group, the Huaishur group's existence barely reached the standard of a race. Young Master Ming regarded them as a whole and included them in her range. Huaishur stared silently at the projection of the Huaishur group in front of him. After a long time, he slowly raised his head as realization dawned on him. In other words, that's right. Once they pledge their loyalty to you, the members of the Huaishur group will definitely be included in young Master Ming's destiny. This will not only increase young Master Ming's strength, but also strengthen your control over them. Tangi whispered softly into his ear, just like a demon's whisper. You don't need me to tell you what to do next. Do you, Student Huaishur, the Level 12 illegal organization? It was as if a brand new door had been pushed open. Huaishur's eyes lit up. After a long time, Huaishur opened his eyes from his nap and raised his hand. After the young Master Ming's sacred mark broke through the disguise, the origin substance stirred, calling for the cage of dreams in the distance to descend and fall into his hand. Huaishur's hand shook slightly, and from the empty birdcage, wisps of white mist spread out. The bubbles from the decaying dream gradually spread, quietly covering the entire Huaishur group. The origin substance fluctuations quickly disappeared along with the birdcage. Huaishur still felt that it wasn't enough. He opened his hand, and a burning banner appeared. The door to the bone-burying sanctuary opened, and as the banner fell, it overlapped here. The decaying dream and the bone-burying sanctuary, 2 layers of power from the same source, covered each other and quickly hid their traces, completely covering the headquarters of the Huaishur group. Next, within this range, he would be able to use young Master Ming's power better. With this heavenly will and miracle in hand, Huaishur could completely control his current organization and manpower, and even go one step further, eliminate the hidden dangers that he hadn't discovered before. He picked up the banner that had fused with his signature pen, flipped open the notebook on the table, and began to quickly organize the situation in front of him and his next plan. The upcoming conflict within the Alliance would directly affect his right to speak within the Alliance, and the peace order that would follow would be a harsh test for the entire Danwave inner circle. In Zhou's Gong family, Wu family, the Astronomical Association, and Green Sun, the conflict between the Alliance and other extreme Daos, and even the hybrids in the Danwave inner circle. Very quickly, the originally tangled mess was sorted out clearly before the peace order was issued. The Gong family and Wu family wouldn't put too much attention on this group of extreme Daos that even they themselves looked down on. And when the hybrids' rebellion and the disaster that the God City would bring in the future spread out, the Danwave inner circle could still maintain a state of self-destruction. Even if the time was short, it was still enough to grasp the opportunity. First, gradually control the power within the Alliance, and resist the influence of the peace order. After completely eliminating the hidden dangers of the God City, he would be able to calmly bring a new order to the Danwave inner circle. If he wanted to plan for the long term, then he would have to consider drinking water, food, medicine, education, work, and so on. Each of these was harder to deal with than the last, and each was more sensitive than the last. Why did it feel more and more like a rebellion plan? Huaisha rubbed his chin and finally realized it could be foreseen that if he didn't handle it well, the consequences would be very tragic. This is a job that will offend people. Huaisha whistled happily and felt that old Master Lin's words made sense. For someone like him who liked to attract hatred, it would be a pity if he didn't take the path of evil. With such a large amount of hatred, it would be a pity if he couldn't get a share of it. However, should he arrange an escape route for the time being? Can the Astronomical Association cover such a big matter? Huaisha murmured curiously, it's still within the scope of a solution. With your ability and connections, the Federal Bureau of Investigation won't send you to the London court and then throw you into the trench prison. In the monitor, AI Ching, who had been watching coldly until now, finally spoke up. I'm afraid the best result will be that the bastards will obtain temporary order, and you will lose your position, and all the trust scram back to the ivory tower to teach, and be blacklisted for life. Everyone will have a bright future. Is that so? That sounds good. Huaisha nodded, and after thinking for a long time, he suddenly laughed. When the time comes, I won't be able to go out. Will you come to see me often? In the silence, no one responded. They couldn't be bothered with him. Don't ignore me. After his originally chaotic thoughts settled down, Huaisha's mood suddenly became cheerful. Speaking of which, being a teacher is actually very interesting. Did you know that I have 2 students? One is mischievous and looks easy to bully. The other is too serious and easy to trust, making people feel embarrassed to bully him. Although they both have a little flaw, they are both very cute. I think in the future, they will definitely become people who can change this world for the better. Yes, they still need a little more effort. Huaisha raised his hand, and his thumb and index finger made a gap, his smile calm and satisfied. After a long time, AI Ching finally spoke again. You know what you are doing right, Huaisha? Very clear. Huaisha nodded. Why? You should know that everything that happens here has nothing to do with you. It's probably because of the good guy mentality. Huaisha scratched his head. Embarrassed. Because I want to do something good, I want to be self-satisfied, and I want to try to prevent some bad things from happening. In this way, this world can become a better place. There's no need to waste time on meaningless nonsense. AI Ching's tone was flat, cold, you're not going to persuade and alienated. I hope you can understand that people are always responsible for what they do. Sorry. Huaisha put his hands together, sincerely grateful. Thank you. The call ended, and there was no more sound. 10 minutes later, in a dark alley in Doomsday Inner Circle. What the hell? Tony, who had taken off the horse mask and changed his appearance, held the phone in disbelief. That bastard Huaisha quit. To be exact, he is going to take root in Doomsday Inner Circle, infiltrate the inner circle of Green Sun, and carry out a long-term mission. The voice on the other end of the phone was full of encouragement. In short, do your best, Teacher Tony. The safety of the present realm depends on you. The phone hung up. On the crowded street, Tony looked down at the display of the end of the call on the phone, and tears were about to flow out uncontrollably. How can a poor tool like me live so that you too will be satisfied? You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.